And noting that it is Wednesday, July 17th, 2024 at 7:07 p.m., I will call the Board of Health meeting to order. And since it is a virtual meeting via Zoom, we can go around in alphabetical order and have the Board of Health members announce their presence.
Stephen Constantine present. Oh, sorry, Daryl.
Oh, no, that's okay. I often go last. I think it's a thing for chairs to go last so as not to unduly influence or something along those lines. But it could be that Rebecca has joined. Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Steve.
Stephen Constantine present.
Julie Dreyfus present.
Diana Hook present.
And Rebecca, are you on?
I don't see her
yet. Maybe not. Okay. All right. So, and then Daryl Beardsley present. All right. I don't know if we have anything that was not anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance of the meeting. Is anyone else aware of anything urgent that would need our immediate attention, like a well has gone dry somewhere? Okay. Hearing not, then we will, we do have 3 variance hearings this evening, and then we have some important business to take care of. And actually, I'd like to start off with the reorganization of the board. It's something that, oh, you know what? We've been holding off because we were waiting for Rebecca, but how do you feel? It's been, I think, 3 or so meetings. What if we have it, and if she wants to revisit it, we could do that? Does that sound reasonable as a way to approach it, or should we wait again? We could do appointments.
I think we should at least do appointments.
Yeah, okay, so let's do that, and we'll leave the reorganization of the board itself. So let me pull up the file for reappointments.
Hi, just wanted to provide an update that Dr. Honeywell is joining us imminently. I just sent her the link info.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. And, well, let's still go ahead with this just in case it takes some time, and then we'll save the other reorganization of the board when she comes on. So here are the appointments to be made. Let everyone read that. Let me know if you have any questions. And so this is kind of funny, Steve, now to have you on this board. You could have been our appointment to the Groundwater Protection Committee, but Barton's already experienced there, so.
He's good. Barton's great.
And have we confirmed that Barton wants to continue to be the representative, or are we unwillingly forcing him to do this?
He hasn't expressed any interest in not being on it.
Okay.
How about that?
We'll take the silence as a yes.
Okay. So in this case, then, do we have, here it is, do we have a motion to confirm the appointments listed above with indefinite terms?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other discussion? Hearing none? Okay, Stephen, I think you're first now for this.
Oh, Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye. All right, and we can do the reorganization of the board as well. So do we have any nomination for chair?
I'd like to nominate Daryl as the chair.
Oh, I'll second that.
Okay, any other discussion? All right, I'll mention, well, let me see how you vote, then I'll mention, I have comments. So, all right, hearing none.
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye. So thank you for your vote of confidence. And let me just say that what I have really enjoyed for the last quite a number of years is that all the board members participate so much in everything. There is no way I want to be doing all the talking and thinking. And so I like the dynamic that we've had and the interaction and everyone chipping in with different perspectives. And I think that is wonderful. So I certainly hope you will always feel free to express your opinions. Okay. And do we have nomination for vice chair? Or I will venture to nominate Julie Dreyfus.
I will second that also. That's all right with Julie.
Sure, I'm willing to give it a try. It's just for 1 year, right? We do this every year.
Yes. And we can change it anytime.
Well, there you go.
And it's a backup to me chairing. So, all right, did we have we had a move. Did we get a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, great. Any other discussion? Hearing none.
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
And Daryl Beardsley, aye. Okay. See. Mark on?
Yes, I'm here, Daryl. I'm on in 2 different ways. I have my iPhone too. We're getting thunderstorms here where I live, just in case I get knocked out. But I would ask the board if you could take up my item number 1 first. The applicant is not, he's in a different time zone, so he asked if we could take 0 Washington Street first, and it is first on the agenda under my business.
Okay. Sounds good. Now, is there any document? I'm trying to remember.
We should have a plan. The most recent plan had a June 10th, 2024 revision.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And this is also
forgetting it's listed, right, it's lot 4.
Yeah, it's listed as Washington Street because it's all one big lot off of Washington, but it's actually on Greenwood Street. Once the lot is approved, then that will also be noted and it will get an address most likely for Greenwood Street. As you can see on the plan, there's a listing right there, the street right there. And if you look down at the bottom of the nameplate, there should be a 610 revision on it. I'm looking, it's just got to populate. Yes, and there's another date.
Yep, 6/10/24 and 7/08/24.
I don't see what the 710 plan is
Oh,
representing.
sorry. It's probably, I can see it because I'm looking at my giant screen.
Yeah, and I'll
Let
try
me
to
make that bigger
increase
for
it.
you.
Yeah, it might just have been some addition to it. Trying to see, and I do see the applicant here as well.
Yes.
I don't know if the
plans always-
engineer is here.
take a
Let's
while
see,
to
it just
open.
says notes. I might have
Oh.
some additional notes added to it, but
Okay, so
am-
you can see that, all right?
yeah. So I am planning to recommend approval, but with some conditions, but we can go over it first.
Okay.
And the conditions, just so the board will know, is that there's, just like we did for Lot 1, Washington Street, also on Greenwood Street, we allowed that septic plan to be approved, conditional to it being released once legal boundaries were in place, and that's the sidelines, as well as the back line too, as well as the lot being approved by the planning board. And the only other requirement or condition would be it wouldn't be released till we receive the deed recording for a garbage grinder prohibition. But outside of that, I don't know if the engineer is here, but if not, I can
Yes, I
send it
saw
to the
him log
board.
in earlier.
Yeah, the applicant is here. I do see the applicant. Bob Murchison's the applicant. But I can answer questions as well.
I'm here if there's any questions.
Oh,
Deshane.
hi, are you here, Deshang?
Yes.
Oh, there you are. I see you. So Deshang is here. Deshang, what were the notes for July 10th, Madam Chair, if I may ask?
I'm just trying to remember myself. I think it was grading minor for the groundwater reference.
Oh,
of,
okay.
Yeah, the test pit.
It was the test pit for the house.
Right.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so we put in the parentheses after in the profile was originally had just indicated the high groundwater, and so the reference test pit, so we added that.
And this is for a 5-bedroom, am I correct? That's what page 2 shows.
Yeah,
Under
I think so.
5-bedroom. Yep, okay. So to the board members, we do have the applicant as well as the engineer here, the owner applicant as well as the engineer, or the applicant, I think at this point.
Almost the
So
owner.
basically-
Yes, I forgot someone still owns the land, but almost the owner is here.
Okay, so, Mark, are you recommending approval subject to the conditions that you mentioned?
Those
Because
3 notes I
everything is
made, yep,
complying with our requirements.
it
Uh,
is.
Okay. Does anyone have any particular questions about this?
I would like to make a comment. I think that it's a very complicated location and there are complicated issues from a Board of Health perspective. And I was wondering if rather than having a conditional approval, I would like to request that after all the conditions have been met, that it come back to the board to review the material.
I'm not sure a garbage grinder deed recording normally is fairly straightforward unless somehow the wording has been changed. And any time that there are conditions, they will be reviewed by Mark. Like, for instance, if the lot lines change, well, then the plan needs to change because it needs to reflect it. So I think conditions are there just to say that we need to do that final verification. So that's part of the standard process. But if everything comes back matching up to what's already here, then what Mark is saying is that it's in compliance with our regulations for new construction.
That is correct with those 3 conditions. And if the plans were to have any changes to them, they would go back to the Board of Health for review.
I know that it's become popular in the recent past to do conditional approvals. I still think it would be better to have all the conditions met, come to the board, we look it over. If there are any questions, we can ask them, and then we give condition. We give approval. I don't think it really takes extra time.
I think what we've always done though, Rebecca, is a permit's not released until the conditions have been met. And then once that's happened. So I think what Daryl's saying is it's not that there's not going to be a final look. It's that it doesn't have to come back to the board. I certainly.
I understand what it means, and I've done 3 terms on the board, and it's not what we've always done. It's what we've done recently. And I still think it's a good procedure to come to the board when everything is met, and that should be when we vote. I know it's become popular to do conditional approvals, but I think that it's better to meet the conditions and then come to the board and have us vote on it. That's when we should be voting.
Someone's not going to file a garbage grinder deed recording unless they knew that the plan was approvable by us, for example. So this has not been a recent practice. This has been as long as I've been on the board, which is more than 3 terms. So
no, I understand. I'm just saying.
I don't think that's different.
I don't feel
I
comfortable
agree
with
that it would be less
conditional approvals. This is because I do not feel comfortable with conditional approvals, and it's not only this case, it's like lots of cases. And I know that some people like them because they think it's more efficient, but I think we just meet all the conditions and then we vote. And then it's more, to me, more efficient because they're not wasting time. Mark gets support of the board. It's the exact same process, except that it's a different point for the for the approval. That's my opinion. You can disagree with me.
I agree with you that time-wise, it would be streamlined to not have the agent going back and rechecking, checking
Yeah,
the
so
current
if we just,
lot lines and then checking again.
yeah.
I don't disagree with that. I don't know that this is, well, it's an unusual circumstance, I guess, is what we're dealing. Well, we hope it's unusual and not going to become a norm. And if we see it becoming a norm, then maybe we have to change so that it's
That's actually why I brought it up.
an extra strain on the staff.
Yeah,
and
I mean, that's
the
why I
Board
brought
of
it up.
Health Resources.
Yeah.
But
I
I don't
may-
know that we've reached that yet. I don't know what others think.
I may
about
chip
that.
in just from a design engineer's.
Hold on,
perspective.
Deshang, I just want to get the board's thoughts first, and I'll get to you in just a moment.
I think that this is a larger question if we want to kind of change what's been the standard practice of the board for the last at least several years. It's not appropriate to do it just based on this case. It has to be something that we apply consistently. And so I would not feel comfortable changing that for this application. I think it would have to be something we address going forward for all of the projects.
Yes,
But
and where we draw the line on what dangling items can and cannot. And there are a lot that we don't. We wouldn't, we have rules about what constitutes a complete application. And this someone is right, as mentioned, the applicant is not quite the owner of the property just yet. So it's a tricky situation. Okay, so I just want to mention, I think there'd be one other condition I'd want to have, and that is that, Mark, it sounds like you haven't had a chance to review the notes, the July 8th
Yeah,
notes.
the newer plan, unless I don't have it, I believe the most recent plan I had, but it could have been, Deshang, was that the plan, if I may ask through you, Madam Chair? Deshang,
Yes,
was that
please.
the plan you brought in when we had the meeting a week ago and you just updated that?
Yeah, I think we reviewed, I sent in, for the printing after we agreed, I already did everything, I just emailed
went-
right at the meeting.
Yeah, so I have the notes from that plan, so yeah, on that plan, you were going to show it was just making sure on both plot plans, there's 2 plot plans, a smaller one and a larger one, that he showed the distance to wetlands on both, which he had in a side note up further on the plan. And as we discussed, the other ones were what we're talking about right now, and that is that there was one note that the well be that the note related to the wells say 175 feet to any downhill wells, because this soil is very permeable and we require you at another 25-foot distance. So that would be on one of the notes to the right side of what you're looking at right now.
Okay.
And indicate deep hole 4 was for the, as the applicant has said, indicate that deep hole 4 was utilized for the groundwater at the house, and those were all corrected. So that indeed, I for some reason there was a plan in between that was submitted, said note profile, water table, and vent. So maybe I'm getting that revision confused with the because that's the one I did review, and this is the new one. So you'll see
Okay.
there's additional notes on the bottom. It'll note the one that's faded out, the 175 feet to any downhill wells. And unfortunately, I think what I did is I took the in-between plan. So, but I did review it at the meeting with Deschang and the applicant that we had at the Board of Health office. So, and everything that I requested, those, and they weren't critical, but they were added to the plan. So,
Okay. Have I made this large enough that you could check it now?
yep. If you look under note number 3, you'll see the proposed on-site well, and it mentions the 175.
Yep.
If you go to the profile of the house, it will note deep hole number 4 was utilized for the groundwater at the house, and that would be, I think, on the next page. It were 2-page sheets, 2
All right,
sheets.
I could try. Computer runs a little slow.
Yeah,
on
there
these
we go. And
ones.
if you go right about there, Daryl, I think right where you see the house, you'll see down there, it says deep hole test pit 4-4.
Yeah.
I'm reading it right, yeah. And they took care of that. The well, there were notes on the well on the other plot plan, the other sheet, and it just had to indicate that their well was 175 feet to the septic system, and it's a small note, but it's built into and it was there prior, but you'll see it's right there too. If you come down just a little bit, Daryl, and you'll see over to the side right there. If you stop right where the well's located, you'll see a note saying 175 feet to SAS, and that's there as well. Was there, and I didn't see that little note, but it's there. So that really wasn't an issue. But the 3 issues wasn't, and all the other matters were corrected that were in question. That's it being a legal lot, which it isn't at this time, but it needs planning board approval, as well as the legal boundaries. The engineer has indicated the sideline, one of them, and the front line is legal, but the other 2 lot lines have to be surveyed. So they can't put legal boundaries at this time. And the other one was the deed recording for the garbage grinder. So those 3, when we looked at lot 1, the board considered approval. For that, with those 3 conditions, the plan will not be released. And what that means is if the plan's not released, then they can't do anything further. They can't get a building permit. They can't go forward and get anything, even drill the well, because everything's withheld. Well permit, septic permit, all gets withheld until those 3 items are added to the plan. If need be, if it makes a major change, any change to the plan, it will be brought back to the Board of Health. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, Deschang or Bob, you 2 can decide which one of you wants to speak.
Yeah, Daryl, I was just going to clarify, what Mark said is correct. The interior lines, so we're buying the property, the 18 acres, as I think most folks know, and all of the perimeter lines have been actually fully done with a boundary survey as of January of this year. So the boundaries on the perimeter of the 18-acre property are about as accurate as they could possibly be. They were just done by a surveyor. What is not, and the interior lines, i.e. in this particular case in lot 4, it would be the back lot line and the western lot line. Those 2 lot lines, they're perfectly accurately drawn, and there absolutely will be the lot lines, but you can't, I'm not able to record that A&R until I own the property. I'm closing on the property on Monday. The A&R will immediately go in front of the planning board. It will be approved. And obviously, if something were to change with those lot lines, which I just can't see why that could possibly happen, but if it did, we would have to submit a new plan for your approval. And as a practical matter, this is the way that you know, a lot of new construction has been done historically because folks don't want to buy properties and draw these lot lines and record them until they know that they work for the permitting authorities. Obviously, you're a major permitting authority. So, you know, if I went and drew the lines and then, you know, you guys had a concern about a distance or something, then, you know, you have to go back and change them. So one never records these lines until we get your approval. That's kind of the natural two-step that is done in a situation like this. And it's, you know, it's what was done, as somebody I think already said, on lot 1. It was done at 53 Farm Road. It's done, you know, and by many other applicants besides myself. This is a very common practice. And, you know, we're committed. If it were to change, we'll come back and need you to vote again. But that won't happen. But if it did, that's what we would do. Thank you.
Okay. Deshang, is there anything new that to add? Otherwise, we're late already for another.
I just quickly I think it's similar to Bob, but I would comment the same for the same reason as a design engineer working many septic systems in many towns. The reason, if you record it, if this lot is not buildable, then people basically spend that money for nothing. So the lot line technically at this point up to this far is not going to impact any technical design review for Board of Health. That's number one.
Yes, we do understand that. So
right.
Can you just add new information? We do understand that, which is why we have considered it at all.
Right.
So
I think we're good, Daryl, to have you move to your discussion and vote. That's great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Rebecca, did you have another comment?
No, that's left from before. Let me lower that.
Oh, okay. All right. So, do we have a motion to approve the plan as presented, conditional to finalization of and confirmation with this plan of the legal lot lines, receipt of planning board approval for this lot, and also a garbage grinder deed restriction?
Yeah, so moved.
Seconded.
Any other discussion? Hearing none? And Steve, do you want to kick off?
Sorry, I was on mute. Steve Constantine, I'm voting aye with the conditions mentioned by Mark.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
And Rebecca, are you?
I'm going to
deciding?
abstain. I'm going to abstain.
Okay. And Daryl Beardsley, aye. Okay. Thank you. And okay, we are going to move to.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. And thank you for taking it first. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Okay. So we have a variance hearing for 60 Brush Hill Road, and it's for an additional septic system on a property, which is something we don't see all the time. And I believe Rob is here, and so I'll bring up the plan, and Rob, you can explain the reason that you're requesting variances, like what site conditions compelling that, and we'll continue. And is Rob on? Sorry, I wasn't double checking. I thought I let him in.
Rob, I thought I saw you are. Rob, did you hear what Daryl asked you to do? Rob, can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm sorry. My sound's
Okay.
a little off. It's really difficult to hear, but I hear you.
You were
Okay.
gonna, Earl asked if you give an overview of the.
I'll give an
why we-
overview, sure. Thank you, everyone. Rob Truax with, I don't know, who did I submit this on, the Truax Engineering or GLM Engineering? So this is existing property at 60 Brush Hill Road. I'm not sure how much anyone's familiar with the history, but there's an existing house on the site. Back some time ago, there was an existing house on the site prior to this one, the four bedroom house that's there up on the hill. And they had put in we had done a new septic system, and at that time we used an alternative Elgin drain system, which is located over by where it says Lot A. And as a result, we weren't able to expand that system because it's a alternative technology. So now we have the situation where there's an existing cottage on the site that's been there for many years. It's a 1-bedroom cottage. It's currently serviced by an existing cesspool just for the cottage and a existing well, which is located just as you're heading towards that other septic system. So Mark and I have been talking about this for about a year, I would say. Gone back and forth. We've reached out to Claire Golden at DEP to get some insight on if we would be allowed to put a system in for a 1-bedroom cottage. And we did get feedback on that. And it was something that would be acceptable under her guidelines, with a deed restriction, of course, for the cottage. So we've gone out there and we've done some testing on the side of the hill right next to the cottage. We've sized out an alternative system using the Elgin trench type system for a 1-bedroom design. We do need to put in a new tank. We're going to put a 1,500-gallon tank in for the cottage because that's the minimum size you have to use. And we're also going to need to pump it because that area is elevated from the existing cottage up on the right side. So we're going to do a pump system with a 1,000-gallon pump chamber, 1,500-gallon septic tank. We are looking for waivers to install the system, which I submitted a new letter actually this week, and I have technically 5 waivers, 4 from the local Board of Health and 1 that's a DEP waiver for the sewage design flow criteria to put in a 1-bedroom design. So I'm not looking for any relief for setbacks to any abutting wells. I show all the wells in the area. I am looking for relief for an existing well on site. There's actually 3 wells on this site. The one that services the cottage is the one we're looking for a waiver for. We thought that was decommissioned when they tore the old house down, but it was not. It serviced the old house and the cottage. They actually drilled a new well for the new house up on the hill, but the cottage was never tied into that well. So I think that's pretty much an overview. It's, other than the waivers, it's pretty straightforward. It is a unique situation where we only got 1 bedroom. I can't recall doing a 1-bedroom design. I don't even think I've ever done one, to be honest with you. So it's kind of unique, and I know Mark and I have had some conversations about the waivers and to make sure we covered everything that was needed to be covered for this type of design. So I think with that, I mean, we can go, I'll let you read through the waivers and I can talk about each one if you need be.
Okay. So Jessica, I might ask if you can bring up that because I don't have that list. I have what's on the plan, but I don't know if it plan has the notes about waivers. Are they all?
Well, this plan
there?
was the previous plan, Darrell. They have now
Oh,
shown
okay.
the water line from the well to the cottage. So the most recent plan is dated July 10th. And Rob, you did submit, I asked you to submit electronic copies. So I'm not for sure if we have that in our possession to show tonight, but there is a
Okay.
new plan with those revisions that were requested, that being showing the old cesspool, showing the water line to the cottage, showing that waiver that was just discussed to the existing well.
Okay.
Yeah, I did submit
It sounds
revised
like-
plans with a revised
Okay.
waiver letter.
Okay. So I guess then there is an answer to my question, which was how were you able to confirm that that well that has the setback issue is actually connected to the cottage? And it sounds like, yes, you found some plans showing where the lines were running, or there's some other method of testing that it's indeed connected to that well and, say, not to the new well that's serving the new house on the right, relatively new house.
Rob, on the new plan or the revised plan, you show the water service line from the existing well that
Yes.
we're looking from the waiver.
I
show
have that if I shared my screen. I have it up on my
Yeah.
screen. I did submit
Alright,
that
then
to
let
you
me-
on this
Yeah.
week.
Yeah, it was a little late in getting to us, so that
Yeah,
Okay,
so
I'll stop
I
share
have a
then.
copy
and
too on
let
the
you-
But
docs.
it
Right.
basically just runs from the well to the cottage. It's a pretty straight line. It's been there for some
Yeah.
time.
Green, that would be great if you can share that plan.
I don't see a place where I can share. Hmm.
Well, for me, it always shows up along the bottom if you can see where you mute
Yeah, I
and
don't.
unmute your
Usually
phone.
there's a spot there. Oh, here it is. It just came up. Got it.
Okay.
Says it's disabled. You got to give me permission to share.
Oh, really?
That'll cost you.
Oh.
You didn't get that, Rob.
Yeah.
No, host disabled participant screen sharing.
Jessica, do you have it available?
Huh.
I could try to pull it up. Yes, give me
I
one
said
second.
one participant can share at a time, but I'm not sharing, so,
Darryl, Jessica did say she may have it, so that would be helpful.
okay.
I can't screen
you-
share either, Daryl. Host
Oh.
disabled.
Can't either. All right, let me
And
try
Daryl's the
this other.
host.
But the additional waiver is on that new plan as well as
Ah.
the service line.
Oh, you know what? It's not letting me change. I'm the host. And I
I don't
found
know how
where
you
it's
give me
locking
permission. I
other
don't know how to
people
do
out.
it from your end.
Okay, then, we're not going to be able to switch.
I
now.
do have it in front of me, Daryl. I'm happy to read it to you if you'd like.
Okay, when we get to the voting, but let's just ask questions first. But when we get down to the waivers needed, then yes.
Absolutely.
It says that those settings have been locked by the admin, which is not me. So, all right, interesting. We'll have to check in with the IT admin for Zoom so get that changed. All right, so. All right, so the water's been confirmed that that well is tied to there. You know where the third well is on the property? Is it just a remnant from when the antique home was on the property, which was over to the left? I don't remember exactly where it was, but it was somewhere over here, roughly.
Yeah, Rob, you have two wells on the property where the new house is located.
There's 3 wells.
Yeah, and then obviously where the old house was located, that's the one you
Yeah.
asked.
So the old one is down the bottom there. That's the one that services the cottage.
Yes.
Okay, that, and then
I
there
think there's
was-
one out by the barn that they use for water at the barn, and then there's the one up to the right of the house that they use for the water for the house.
Okay, so the one that's across from the wall, maybe we can show the plan again. I think it would be on there.
Yeah, I don't have those services shown for the house because obviously we're not reviewing the
have
house,
the
but it is on an as-built plan in your files.
For the house, we have it. We just don't know
Yeah.
what the well services. And it is right on the other side of the wall. That's
Here's
between.
another well here.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember where, I did see the third well, where did
Yeah,
I
up near the
see it?
barn, there's a well. I don't know if you can share that plan again.
Oh, yes, okay, there's, oh, sorry, I'm looking at it, I'm happy, I'm seeing
Yeah,
it.
nobody else is.
I'm certainly.
We're all looking at each other.
Excuse me,
Thank you, Darryl.
I was satisfied. All right. All right, so, are you seeing it yet?
Yeah, see your arrow too.
Okay, great. So there's the cottage. Here's, I would assume, is the new one
That's
serving
for the new
this
house. That is
dwelling.
correct. Yeah.
And then here's the third, which you say is, you think?
Yeah, they have
Right,
water in
so
the
they're all
barn.
in use.
Mm.
Okay. So this was maybe related to that it had been 3 parcels, and also before we limited how many wells on a property. So, are these 3 parcels legally combined into one property, or are there issues? I'm thinking ahead to any kind of condition. Like if this was split apart, would DEP be okay with having a 1-bedroom cottage with a 1-bedroom septic system when usually 3 bedrooms is the minimum? Do you know if there's any risk provided, or do we just need to maybe come up with something on that?
Rob, but the other 3 I mean, is the other house noted as 60 Brush Hill as well? Do you know? I can't
Say that
remember.
again, Mark?
The new house, the existing dwelling, is that
Yeah.
also is that address also 60 Brush Hill, or is that a different address?
No, yeah, no, that's the main house. That's the house number.
Yeah.
So
So-
this is an accessory cottage to that house.
Okay, so
So
that's
it's all one address. They have, I don't know, 20, there is a big parcel of land. They have about 20 something acres in total,
okay. So even though it shows,
parcels that make up this property.
yeah, if you see, Rob, you put lots 1 and 2 near the house, the existing new house, and up above lot B. So, but those are all combined to be 1 lot now.
They're all, they show up on the assessors like that, Mark. I don't know why. Has all these parcels, and it's all one ownership. It's all common ownership. Not sure why they show up like that. I mean, that's the way we've been labeling them since we did the original design back when. So it hasn't really changed anything.
Okay,
I
so
think- Oh, I'm sorry,
just
Derek.
another question. Did we need to have, since maybe there's just like some check that can be done either with DEP or with the assessors, just on what the story is with the parcels? Actually, the way it is, it almost looks like
Those lines
is
kind
the
of go through
cottage
the
on
house.
this middle one here, or is it on this kind of where those 3 intersect? Relationship seems to be right.
I'll interject, Daryl, at least in looking
Yeah.
at it on GIS, which I know is, not perfect. It was confusing because it did look like the parcel lines ran so that the cottage and the proposed SAS were potentially on different parcels, which raised a red flag for me.
Yeah.
They do run through the cottage, and they do run through the house.
Yeah, because the cottage seems to be right about
It's,
there.
I don't know why they're shown like that. I don't really know the answer to that. All I can tell you is it's common ownership, 1 owner for all the parcels. So I mean, in common ownership, when the zoning is, even if they change zoning, I mean, he'd have to re-subdivide to break that up because he couldn't put the house or anything in violation if he was to try and carve a lot out somewhere else down the road or subdivide it with a road or whatever. I mean, it's just the way the parcels are recorded. It's the way it is in his deed. It's, for some reason, they just label all the parcels in the deed. I don't know why.
Okay. Well, what I'm wondering is, Mark, is this the one where there's, I don't know if the variance to the existing well was in the notice to abutters. Is that something that we can address tonight or not?
The variance that was added is to their own well, so it's not to an abutter's well, it's to that existing well, to the left side of the plan, lower left side, that one right there, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that did not have to be in the notice to abutters?
Well, I believe Rob, how, we were looking at this actually and comparing it to 226 Western Ave. And in the minutes of 226 Western Ave, the board And this goes back to January 18th of 2023. And at 226 Western Ave, there was that additional variance hearing the board did hold an additional variance hearing with 2 variances granted at the time. So because of the additional variances that were needed. So Rob and I went over that a revised plan was needed, which he has here. This plan has been revised to show the variances. And along with the one local upgrade. So there was already a precedent set back on 226 Western Ave.
Of holding an additional variance hearing?
Yeah.
That's my recollection of
yeah,
this
well,
variance, is I know
yes.
this one is the nuance of being to something on the
Yeah, so-
owner's property, but I don't know if there are any other gray area things where it could seem like it's just an
you are-
owner issue, but
You are correct, Darrell. A second variance hearing was held on January 18th. The first variance hearing, and I'm talking about 226 Western Ave, was held on December 21st, 2022, and then a second variance hearing was held on January 18th, 2023. Rob and I went over this because he was the engineer for that site as well. So, yeah, if the board decides to approve this, it would have to be conditional to a second variance hearing. Again, the good part here is that this variance is being requested to their own well.
right.
Yeah,
Okay.
it doesn't, the variance doesn't affect any abutters.
Right. But I still think unless, again, I kind of hate to change a policy that DEP has and asks us to take very seriously, and we've reviewed various issues with them, and they've always said that we have to do the butter notification.
I don't have a problem with that, Madam Chair. If you want to push this off, that one variance to the next meeting, and continue it, I don't have a problem with that.
And here's what I'm thinking, and the reason I brought it up is, one, we could handle that at the next meeting, but also between now and then we could find out if there's anything that would have to be, either a deed recording, as you pointed out, Rob, just letting people know that to divide up this property, would have to make sure that everything, well and septic, was still in compliance as a result. And so we
I
could
can,
figure that out between now and the next meeting.
sure, I can get Mark a copy of the deed for the property. I mean, they just closed on this last year, so it's a new, I can get a copy of that. I probably have it in my files. I'm sure I do.
Okay. And that might help, and maybe
Yeah,
Claire or somebody
I'll
else
send
could
you
also,
that, so that'll help
if there's
clarify
somebody
some
could
of the,
shed
maybe
light.
the possible
Yeah.
issues.
All right. Okay, so let's do that. Is everyone okay if we, and Rebecca, I'll get to you in just a second, but just on the administrative side, if we just deal with the variances that the abutters were notified about, we can take care of that tonight in the interest of time, and since we've been through a bunch of it already. Vote on those, have the next variance hearing, and then add any other conditions necessary at that time. Sound okay with everyone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good with
And
that.
Rebecca, do you have a question for the engineer or Mark?
Are we, I think as a board, because we're supposed to be thinking about public health, it's not just the current owner, it might be future owners. I think that we should, I'm not sure, although you could say from a legal standpoint, somebody can choose to contaminate their own well, take their own risks, especially when we have multiple structures on one property that previously were separate lots. I don't know if it's, if there's a reason that is justifiable to potentially contaminate your own well with a new construction. And I think that it's important that we follow what we usually follow, which is to say no variances for new construction. And it doesn't, I mean, to me, it's sort of irrelevant if you are taking the risk for yourself, because we should know better, and because it's new construction, so you have the ability to make good decisions. That's my opinion.
If I may, Madam
Okay,
Chair.
I'll just mention one thing. I agree with you, except in this case, it's not new construction. So we're actually trying to improve a cesspool situation with an improved septic, and then the dwelling and the existing well to that dwelling are staying the same. But go ahead, Mark.
No, I was just going to say that, and it's unfortunate we don't have the newer plan showing the existing cesspool and the water line that's already connected to the cottage. And actually, this cottage was recognized a couple of years ago as being rented out as like a resort cottage for people to rent. So it is an existing cottage. Unfortunately, when the previous house was there and the new house was built, the engineering part of it did not recognize one way or the other if this had its own cesspool. To be honest with you, I'm thinking that it was a previous engineer who worked for Rob. I think he was told it may have been a tool shed. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rob.
No, I think you're right.
Yeah, and this got discovered after the fact. The previous owner, who was the owner after the first plan was designed, realized this facility had plumbing. And so we're trying to correct Rob's trying to correct this and so on. The newer owners, these are new owners now, from the people that bought the house a few years back. So it is indeed repair. And I asked Rob to make sure he did have that note under the design flow. He showed it as an upgrade to a septic system, but he is now on this new plan I have here, dated July 10th. It also notes this is a upgrade right on the address block.
And we do appreciate what they're doing, Rob, too, because as things unfolded and we were wondering what was going on with what was not a tool shed and seemed to be a rental, we were not able to get additional information from the then owners. So I'm glad
But also, if I
the
can
owners have
just comment on that
investigated this
again.
and are, excuse me? I
So
missed your
the
question.
new variance for the well, to our existing well, is actually going to, this new system is going to provide a more a better degree of environmental protection, because right now the existing cottage is serviced by a cesspool, which is in the area of those new tanks. So it's even closer to the well than what the new system would be. And it's probably sitting in the groundwater, and it's not providing much protection to the groundwater at all, if any. So I do think it is an upgrade. It's not new construction. I think we kind of got that from Claire Golden as well, and that was the reason we were allowed to do the 1 bedroom with a deed restriction.
Okay, good. Yes, I didn't realize that's where the cesspools were. And they don't do much of anything for treatment. They're really a conduit into groundwater. So, all right, so that's good. All right, does anyone else have any questions? Otherwise, we could go to each variance being requested and vote them. And so either Rob or Jessica, could you help us out with what the specific variances are?
Daryl, should we just double check if there are butters with questions?
Yes, thank you. And if there are any guests in attendance at the meeting who do have questions, certainly as we get to each variance too, if you think of a question related to that, do raise your hand and certainly discuss it. Okay.
And Daryl, I don't know if you want, but I just forwarded the updated plan if you want to look at that.
To preserve my system resources, I'm logged out of email.
Okay,
to
that's
make
fine.
sure that I
thought I might have.
have better connection. So anyway, if someone would like to read whatever the current, go through the variances just so we know what we're voting on.
Yeah, they're on page 2, sheet 2, Daryl, if you want to
Oh,
go
are
to
they on
Yeah,
this
you
one?
can
I
scroll
did
down.
see them, but it didn't look like 5, so that's why I
Yeah,
wasn't
well, the
going
one
to
that
what
we
I
can't
have.
discuss, yeah, and the one that can't be discussed tonight, Daryl, would be, and it's a little bit over to the other side, Daryl, the sheet. It's
Oh, okay.
over on the right side. And now back straight up.
Oh,
and you'll
yeah,
see them
now I
all-
remember where it was. Yep, yep.
They're there, yep.
Okay,
And
great. Then,
ironically, the one that they do need, well, two things. Rob will recognize the fact that the DEP local upgrade, he relabeled as a Title V request. It's really not a local upgrade, and that's the number one on this middle section. Outside
Yep.
of that, the other variance is not on this plan because he added it to the revised plan, which you'll be seeing at the next meeting. So this is actually a good list of the waivers.
oh,
Just
all right, of what we're doing now.
yeah,
Perfect.
get to the next section, which says DEP local upgrade approval. That has
Yep.
been relabeled. I talked to Rob. It's a DEP Title V waiver, DEP Title V
Okay.
waiver instead of local upgrade approval. It's labeled
Alright.
properly for the regulation number. It just, the way it's addressed is improper. And Rob did
Okay.
correct.
I agree.
All right, so let's start with Sherborn. So do we have a motion to grant a waiver to section 8.01? And as you can see, this has to deal with depth to groundwater, and the Elgin is, the IA technology of the Elgin is being
And I would recommend that.
applied to help address with that.
And my
Go ahead, Mark.
recommendation, the board approves that.
Okay.
So
And
moved.
Any,
Seconded.
great, any other questions or discussion? Hearing none?
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye.
The next
And we
waiver, if
can-
you want me to help Daryl, is based on natural conditions, that they found groundwater within the first 5 feet of soil. And so they need a waiver from the local regulations 8.0-2. And I would recommend that to the board for approval.
Okay, and do we have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other discussion? Hearing none?
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye.
Now, the next one, Daryl, I would ask Rob to present his reasoning for
Okay.
wanting to go to a single pump versus a dual pump system.
Okay.
Sure. So we're looking for, generally you request on your regulations for residential, you have the design that's required to have 2 pumps in the chamber. In this application, I'm requesting a waiver to only have 1. And the reason being is it's a very low flow system. We have 1 bedroom. The house isn't used every day. It's not someone living in there full time. So even if the pump was to fail and it was being used, you have almost 2 weeks of storage within the pump chamber under those flow conditions. So they have ample time to replace it. I know in other conditions, we have these large houses with, 5, 6 bedrooms and a lot of flow, and it may fill up within a day or two. And that's the reason for the second pump. So they have time to get the first one that does fail, is my understanding. So I think in this application, because of the flow being so small, that we didn't feel a second pump was necessary.
So that sounds reasonable to me. I have a question as to whether it's still going to have the same kind of alarm system associated with the pump, so it won't take filling up the tank and it backing into the house to know that the pump has failed after a week or so of use. They'll know right away. Is that still the case?
Can I ask a question to the engineer? I'm sorry, we're in the middle of.
Well, can he finish the answer to that question, and then you can ask
I'm
him
sorry, I
question.
couldn't hear her.
Yeah, she hasn't asked a question yet, but if you could just
Oh.
answer the pump alarm first, and then we'll go on to Rebecca's question.
The pump alarm will go off once the pump doesn't turn on, the pump alarm will go off. Generally, what happens in a 2 pump situation is the pump doesn't go on, the alarm goes off, and then the second pump would go on.
Mm-hmm.
In this instance, the alarm's just gonna go off, and it will not shut off until someone addresses it.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. And Rebecca, go ahead.
Can you give us a little bit more information on the function, risks and benefits of a 1 versus 2 pump system? And is
Sure.
it because
Sure.
obviously our regs are designed because we have a fragile high water table and we all share the same aquifer? It's everybody's best interest, not just the homeowner, to have a good backup
So
system.
the water table really
Okay.
doesn't have anything to do with the pumps going on and off. There's
Well, if
no
it
groundwater
failed,
going in the tanks,
except
but
if it failed,
huh?
it could contaminate the water table.
If there is,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If it failed, the second pump would kick in.
the second pump would kick in, correct?
So it would only be in the case of a failure where it would have the potential to lead to contamination.
It
Which
would
is
only
the
be in the
only
case of
time when
failure,
the
but
two-pump
the
system
difference
would have
is
value.
in other applications, we only have about 24 hours to 48 hours of storage in the pump chamber. If the pumps fail, because it's a larger house and there's more flow, you know, you're looking at 300 to 500 gallons a day of flow in a single family house with like 4 or 5 bedrooms. In this instance, we're only looking at about 100 gallons at most of flow. So we have 1,000-gallon tank. So it would take almost 2 weeks to fill the tank if the pump failed, it wouldn't go back on. So they have ample time to replace it or fix it. And these people come right out. There's usually a 24-hour service on all these pump companies. They have a 24-hour call. So there is the ability to get someone out there in a rapid response on these pumps. They respond quite quickly. So in this instance, the only reason I'm asking for it is because it is such a low flow. We generally use, you know, Title V doesn't require 2 pumps for residential applications. We only have to put them in commercial applications. But I think, you know, the 2 pumps are great in a large house because you have so much flow. And one fails, the other's going to kick in. So, but I'm just saying it, and the only backup I have, the only reason I'm doing it is because it's such a low flow.
The other thing I'll mention is that the reason you have a pump system here is because the SAS is higher than the tank, so it can't be gravity fed. So that means if the tank, say they ignored the alarm on the pump, it'll most likely back up into the cottage, not out into the ground. So the penalty will be to the occupants, not to the overall groundwater condition in the area. And Mark?
Yes, Darrell, I was just going to say this will be a first, but we don't see 1-bedroom cottages every day. And I think that's why I asked Rob to go ahead to explain why he decided on this. And I do agree with him. There is a lot more storage for a 1-bedroom than you would a typical 3 or 4-bedroom. With that noted, the board will be setting a precedent, but at the same time, I think the precedent is for a 1-bedroom cottage or intermittent use that has a minimum of 1,000-gallon pump chamber. And I think it's a reasonable request based on those 2 items, but it does set a precedent. But I don't know how often we're going to see a 1-bedroom intermittent type use or a cottage. So I just wanted to add that to it.
Actually, good point if there are more accessory units, and also having the pump systems. And then there's another thing that if you're not using a piece of equipment very much, one, it could potentially fail more if it's really intermittent use of this cottage. So that could be an issue, but they'll find that out with the alarm. The other is that if you're putting in a second pump and it's really not used, almost there, and 20 years later when the first pump fails and you need to turn to that second one, it may not function at that point. So I am caught a little bit in the practicality, and I guess can't. Yeah, it's a little bit of a tricky thing because it's hard to know how many cottages with the ADUs we might see at some point that are used more heavily. But maybe that's if it's going to be a rental. I don't know.
Daryl,
Change the policy. Is there room to add a second pump if need be in the future? Rob?
I think
You
Rob's-
could, yeah, there's room.
Okay. All right. So, Rebecca, I think you were next.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so this property has changed hands twice in the last couple years, and I'm not sure we know that the flow is always going to be low, although obviously with one bedroom, the potential is slightly limited. And I was wondering if there were a real health reason to set a precedent, since it is in the regs, and I don't know. I'm always saying the wrong thing, but I feel like it's always better to be safe than sorry. When we're in a town with 100% private water supply. If we don't know whether these guys could turn around, I mean, if they're using it as rental property, who knows what their use will be? We don't know. So I would not be inclined to, without a compelling reason, to have one pump over two to violate the regs as written.
Okay. Steve?
Yeah, and I apologize. I'm just trying to get a little bit of clarification. Can you zoom back out to the property that shows the cottage?
Okay. Sure.
Okay. So I just, and again, I'm just trying to do this just to get a better understanding of what's going on.
Ask away.
If I go to Zillow, right, and I start looking at some of the pictures out there, if you kind of scoot down a little bit, scoot up, see where it says existing?
Mm-hmm.
That's a cottage right there. Isn't it?
It's not a cottage anymore. That was where the old house was. That's just the remains of an old part of the old house. They made it into like a storage area. There's no facility in there.
I mean, if you don't mind, can I share?
I don't know. I'll stop sharing and see if you can, but there seems to be a new setting on that is preventing that.
All right, let me see
But
if
it
we
was
can.
set at the town level.
Yeah, it says host
Not by
disabled
me.
participant sharing screen. Let me try
Okay,
again.
now try. I'm done.
No, it's the same thing. Host disabled participant sharing screen.
Yeah, and I haven't.
I've
I've checked the screen that allows me to do that. I can't even turn it off. It says
it's interesting because it shows the main house and it shows a barn, and right next to that barn it shows, looks to me like a cottage. So I'm just trying to get my bearings. I'm not sure if we're looking at the same thing. Mark, maybe you can.
We did look at this before.
Yeah.
Which is a bigger question about what was going on this property, because we could see from photographs online of the property that pretty expensive and what's there, but we could never get clear information about it.
Yeah.
And
I don't know if you want to go through the extra effort, but if you go to Zillow and you look at the photographs for 60 Brush Hill, and you go to photograph number 39, that kind of shows you what I'm talking about. Again, I'm not trying to make a big thing out of this, but it's just something just doesn't look right to me.
Well, you know what? Maybe okay, so maybe we could focus on this, but perhaps for the next meeting, I don't know if it's possible, if there are floor plans out there for all of these buildings on the property, maybe to just clear up what's happening in each one.
Okay.
I think we were told at times that maybe somewhere it heated. But again, we didn't have good information other than seeing the photos online and trying to piece together what was what and what was or wasn't tied into the septic. But even so, they are space. Okay, and Julie, you had a comment earlier.
I was just going to note that we are late for 2 of our other variance hearings. If we have a lot more discussion on this, I suggest that we just continue it at a later time because we have the engineer waiting. I want to be respectful.
Okay, yes, it's a good idea. So Rob, are you able to stick around? We'll take care of the other variance hearings and come back to this topic.
Sure, that's
Yeah,
fine.
Rob, you've got 193 Forest anyways, so that'll be coming up.
Yeah, I'll stick
All
around.
right,
That's
so
fine.
we're going to continue this to after the other 2 variance hearings. Don't have a fixed time for that.
Okay.
Other than later than now. Okay. Now let me get back to. So thank you, Dan, for waiting. So we have a variance hearing for a septic replacement at 14 Peckham Hill Road. And I was going to say, Dan, if you wanted to share, but I gather that's not possible, so let me pull up that. And did we receive all the green cards? Sorry, I forgot to ask that for Brush Hill Road.
Yes, Darrell, that was indicated, and Jessica, you can add to it if you'd like. That was indicated by Jean earlier today that she did receive the green cards for both this property and 27 Farm Road.
Okay,
as
and
well
Brush
as
Hill
16
Road
Brush
too?
Hill. Yes, she wrote all.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so we'll open the hearing. Dan, take it away, and I will bring that up. And
Dan McIntyre, representing the homeowners of 14 Peckham Hill Road. They're in the process of selling their home and failed the Title V inspection, so we were retained to design a new one. This is an existing 4-bedroom house. It's got a conventional septic tank, trench type system. The issue with this particular system is that it was buried quite deep. So it did get into the groundwater table, which triggered the failure criteria for Title V. What we're proposing is to install an Elgin type system, alternative technology system, so we can maintain the same grades in the backyard. There we go. So to orientate you, Peckham Hill Road is over on the right-hand side. The well is right in the front yard. The house was constructed about in the middle of the lot. And then we have the septic system in the backyard. We went in and put in the 3 test pits around the existing system to determine what type of soils were there. And we found that most of the backyard had already been filled to try to create a level yard when they were building the house. And I think that's why the system got kind of buried too deep. So we're proposing to put in a tank and a pump tank and an Elgin system in a trench configuration. The Elgins allow us to reduce the groundwater offset up to 2 feet off of groundwater. In this particular instance, we don't need that much. We're looking at a minimum of 2.7 feet off groundwater for trench 1. Trench 4, it'll be over 4 feet to groundwater over there, because the original lot was a real sloped lot, and the groundwater followed the slope, so we have more groundwater offset on the lower ends than the upper ends, but we're using Elgins throughout on a level trench system. We can't really raise the backyard up anymore because of the elevation of the house. We'd be filling up over the clapboards and over the deck to make this work. So we are requesting for that waiver for the groundwater reduction using the Elgins. And was there another waiver we were asking for this one? The other waiver we were asking for was the 2 perk tests. We performed 1 perk test. But as I say, because of the depth of the fill, we couldn't safely perform a second percolation test, so we're asking for a waiver on that one. And I think with that, I can turn it over for questions.
Mark, do you have any comments? Probably mostly about the perk test.
Yeah, no, I, as Dan noted, difficult site, and with the request for the perk test, I don't see an issue with that as well. I think I'm just going to his waivers right here, and he did get he got one perk test, but as noted, it was a difficult site. And Dan, if you want to add to that, you're welcome to it.
We do have the 1971 design plan that had percolation rates that matched what we found in that one test as well.
You can see there's some slopes coming down where the testing was done as well on both sides.
And I note that there's also the setback, neighboring well,
Yeah.
on-site well from some sort of surface water, I'm assuming a stream.
There's a perennial stream kind of
Here,
two lots over,
further, yeah.
one lot over. So we're in the 200-foot riverfront area. We're part of this lot.
Mhm.
And we've obtained approval from conservation for this work.
Okay, anyone else have any comments or questions?
Darryl, I don't know if there's any abutters that were interested in this property that might be here.
Yeah, if there are, we'd welcome any comments or questions. I'm almost thinking that with all of these complex issues, it did push you to be right in this area. There wasn't really much of a choice.
There really wasn't. We did an alternatives analysis for conservation and tried to push the system up further to the top of the page to try to get out of riverfront area, and it just raised the system up too high. So I think we're in really the optimum site right there.
Yeah. Okay. So, and I don't, oh, wait. All right, let me bring up then, certainly we can talk about anything else that someone thinks about as we're going through the.
And Darryl, if you need the waivers, I'm on the sheet number 1 over to the right side, to the far right. There they are there in the middle. Yep.
Oh. Okay. All right, I'll start with the town ones. So we have do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 5.1D regarding the requirement for 2 perk tests where 1 has been provided?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other comments or questions from anyone, board and others?
Steve
Hearing
Constantine.
none?
Aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Darrell Beardsley, aye. Do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 8.01 regarding groundwater offset?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other discussion? Hearing none?
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Darrell Beardsley, aye. And do we have a motion to grant a variance to 8.02, also having to deal with groundwater in naturally occurring soils?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other discussion? Hearing none?
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Darrell Beardsley, aye. And do we have a motion to grant a local upgrade waiver to, oh, none. No, never mind. Okay. I
Darrell,
think
I'd
then,
recommend approval of the plans conditional to the 2 deed recordings, one for the innovative alternative technology and the garbage grinder prohibition.
okay, so I'll close the hearing, and do we have a motion to approve the plan with the 2 deed recordings just identified by Mark?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other discussion? Hearing none?
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Darrell Beardsley, aye. Okay, thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
And we can move right on to the next one. 27 Farm Road, yes?
Yes. For the record, Dan McIntyre representing the homeowners of 27 Farm Road. This one is a little more challenging than the last one we just looked at. Farm Road is down to the bottom of the screen. The well is right in the front yard. The existing system is right on the back corner of the back right-hand corner of the house. There's a tank there going to
This, yeah.
yeah, going to some unknown size system right in that general area.
Okay.
So the existing system is, within 100 feet of the existing well. So whatever we do here is an improvement. So we tested further up back to meet the 100-foot well offset and to meet the 50-foot wetland offset that DEP says is protective of the wetlands. So we're proposing to put in an alternative technology system here as well, the same Elgins. And this particular one, due to space constraints, we're proposing to do it in a bed configuration. This site was subject to a very high groundwater table due to the adjacent wetlands. And it had a very sandy soil. So when we did the test bits, it was the groundwater was very close to the surface and the soils were collapsing. So we couldn't do a perk test here. So we went to the sieve analysis to get a perk rate out of that per the state requirements. Mark and I both felt the soils were very sandy, gravelly soil, so we kind of knew what the perk rate would be. But we still had to go through the process to getting the sieve analysis done. Came out to be less than 2 minutes per inch, which required a 5-foot groundwater offset in this particular site. Using the Elgins, we're proposing to reduce that down by 2 feet to a 3-foot groundwater offset in order to fit everything on the site and not impact the wetlands and the wetlands buffer any more than we are. So we're putting in a new tank, and because the house was set up raised up high, we can keep everything gravity going down to the leaching area. We're mounding that area up as much as we can to try to avoid retaining walls and wetlands and property lines. And we're eliminating the existing system that is close to the well. So we're asking for a number of variances on this one, all related to the groundwater and wetlands. One is, I always ask for the leaching bed one because I'm not quite sure whether we should or shouldn't, but
Yeah, Dan, just for a point of order to Darrell. Darrell, you can go to the the same location, the right-hand side of the plan, if everyone's okay with what they just saw. And you'll see the waivers are built into the side of the plan right there. Your pointer's right at them. Yep, thank you. Sorry, Dan.
Oh, yeah. So the first one was we use a leaching beds are prohibited in Sherborn. I think they're allowed per if we use an IA system with pressure dosing, but this one's a gravity system, so we're asking for the waiver on the leaching beds to use the alternative technology. Again, we didn't do any perk tests here. We did a sieve analysis because of the groundwater. We're asking for a 3-foot offset to groundwater instead of 5 to keep the grading reasonable toward the property line and the wetlands. And the 8.02, that's the natural conditions. The groundwater is less than 5 feet below grade. We are 55 feet off the wetlands, so we're asking for a waiver on the wetland offset. And we're 116 feet from the on-site well. So we're asking for a waiver on that, which because of the fast perk rate, it would be 150 feet in this condition. We do meet the abutters well setbacks. So it's just the on-site well that we're asking for. So with that, I can turn it over for questions. It's a 4-bedroom house and it's staying a 4-bedroom house.
Coming back to showing these, this is the 50-foot buffer
Yes.
line.
Yes.
The wetlands here.
The wetland is the green line.
And then here's the 100, right? So we usually talk about 125 feet, but here's the end of the property. So it would be, I think it's impossible to even get the 125 anywhere on the property that's not next to the well in the front yard. So does anyone else have any questions or comments for Dan?
I think you did a great job, Dan. This is a very challenging site.
Thank you.
And Darrell, I'm not for sure if any abutters are here, but I can't tell sometimes if they're in the butter or not.
Hopefully everyone feels free to raise their hand and volunteer any questions or comments.
And if abutters ever can't raise their virtual hand, they can just unmute and speak up.
Yes, that would be perfectly fine.
And for the record, Conservation has approved this.
Yeah, and just so the board knows, I support everything Dan said. When we went out there, very wet, couldn't do perks and too dangerous to do perks. Safety is always first. He did provide the sieve analysis of the soil, and that has to be done. He did and he can't add bedrooms because he did a sieve analysis versus a perk test. But again, safety rules here. Based on the constraints due to wetlands and the wells, I agree with him. I don't care for beds. I think the state feels the same way, but in this case, using the alternative technology, I think it's going to be a lot better than what exists. And based on the conditions at the site, this will condense the system to some degree, so it's not getting closer to the well or to the wetlands. I would support all the waivers that are being requested and the 2 local upgrade approvals. Thank you.
If I can just add, Mark, these beds are a little different than a stone bed, where it's all uniform stone across the bottom where the biomat may develop. On these ones here, it's more like trenches. We're using the Elgin lines there. There's not much separation between the lines, but we have that sand in between the line that allows the aeration to go up without the biomat building up in that particular area. So it's a little bit better than a standard bed.
Thank you for that, Dan.
Yes. Okay. Well, again, we'll move over to the waivers and variances. And again, we can always reopen something if something comes to anybody. All right, so do we have a motion to grant a variance to 1.2, which is a gray area because we permit the IA technologies, but we also don't permit beds. But some of the IA have been approved with beds. So, anyway, do we have a motion to grant a variance to 1.2?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other discussion? Hearing none?
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
So Rebecca, is your...
Did you not hear me?
No, we didn't hear you.
Oh, can
Do
you hear
now,
me?
though.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye. We have a motion to grant a variance to 5.1D regarding perk tests that had to be substituted for with sieve analysis.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other discussion? Hearing none?
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye. We have a motion to grant a variance to 8.01. And a 3-foot offsite will be provided in accordance with Title V.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other discussion? Hearing none?
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye. We have a motion to grant a variance to 8.02 and depth to groundwater. And the natural condition on the site is that the 5 feet is not met.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other discussion? Hearing none?
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye. We have a motion to grant a variance to 10.2, noting that Conservation Commission has reviewed and approved this.
So moved.
Seconded.
Discussion? Hearing none?
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye. We have a motion to grant a variance to 10.1, which is distance to the upgrading well, which also happens to be the on-site well.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other discussion? Hearing none?
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye. And for Title V, do we have a motion to grant a waiver to 15.4051H?
And Daryl, these are both local upgrade approvals as allowed by the local approving authority. Thank you.
Thank you. So these are pretty much repeats about groundwater offset.
Correct.
I'm not sure, excuse me, I'm not sure that first one's really required for the Elgin.
Yeah, you're approved for it already in
But
Elgin, but it's a safe way.
Okay. So,
I agree with you.
so we should still vote on it, Mark?
I would suggest it, yes.
Okay. All right. I forget. Did we get a motion for that in a second yet or not yet?
Okay, so moved.
Seconded.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none?
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye. And do we have a motion to grant a waiver for 15.4051L? Aye.
Aye, yeah.
Aye, okay. And that has to do with the use of the sieve test.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other discussion?
Daryl, just noting that as Dan noted, there's no increase in bedroom count, which is required if you're going to do a sieve analysis for the design for the design rate.
Which is, as you've noted before, kind of a reflection on that they consider a sieve analysis the less optimal choice.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Motion?
Steve
Anyone move?
Constantine. Oh, sorry.
I think there was motion, and then you asked for a
Yes, we did have a motion. It was at
I
the discussion. Yep,
apologize.
you're right. Okay, go ahead, Steve. You're right.
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Carol Beardsley, aye. Okay, so close the hearing, and are the plans ready for approval?
Yes, Daryl, they are conditional to two deed recordings, one for the garbage grinder prohibition and one for the innovative alternative technology being used in this system.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the plans subject to receipt of the deed recordings identified by Mark?
So moved.
Seconded.
Discussion? Hearing none?
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Carol Beardsley, aye.
Daryl,
Okay,
if
thank
I'm
you, Dan.
Thank
Yes,
you.
go ahead.
Daryl, if I may, I do have other items, but I noticed the state tobacco agents here, and my other items are not hearings, although I do have Rob Truax waiting on 193 Forest, but I see that there has been, Sarah has been waiting in the audience, and it's up to you, Madam Chair, but if you want to go forward to the Health Administrator's business for the tobacco regulations, I believe that's what she's here for. But Jessica, if Daryl so wishes, I'd be glad to wait for the other parts of my agenda.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate you offering
Yeah.
that as an option.
That's good. I was wondering about whether to switch around our next item. So, Sarah, I assume that would be appealing for you?
That's fine for me. Thank you. I appreciate that, Mark.
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
Good,
And
Jessica. How are you
stop-
doing?
Oh, I guess I'll try to share.
Thank you so much for being available to us. For those
Sure.
of you who don't know on the call, Ms. McColgan is a subject matter expert in all things tobacco. She assisted me with drafting and reviewing Sherborn's tobacco regulations and providing the updates as needed to be in compliance with the 2019 legislature that was passed. And Sarah, if you would be, take it away from here.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. I sent Jessica, and I'm assuming that it's been shared with you folks, a draft regulation that would bring Sherborn up to the state standards that were established in 2019 when Governor Baker signed an act relative to tobacco control. And some of the things that are in this template are things that Sherborn already had in your local regulations, so that makes life easier. And some of them are things that you didn't have. Many of the state requirements are things that you have. However, there's a lot of kind of nuances with the state new law that I'd like to go over. So, do you folks have, there we are. There's the template regulation. And so if we want to go ahead to page, it's not giving, page 3. The first 3 pages are whereas statements, justifications for why we've put particular things in this template regulation. And then after that, we get into definitions. A lot of these definitions are accepted tobacco control definitions for years, or they may be in the state law. Anything yellow you see is in the state law. There are some green highlights, and those are anything green is local policy that the board can choose if they want, or can decide that they don't want to put that in. So like in the first definition, adult only retail tobacco store that has a separate entrance not used by any other retailer that does not sell food, beverages, or alcohol. Sometimes convenience stores and adult only stores are abutting each other, and they might put, tear down the wall in between them or put a door there or something, and that allows young people from going into the convenience store where they're not being asked for identification, obviously, to get in that door and then go into the adult only part where normally they wouldn't be permitted to go in. So this just makes it, a nice dividing line of that they have to have separate entrances. We were finding that staff was running back and forth, and it was just causing a lot of issues with sales to young folks. So if you look through here, you're going to see a lot of green things like that. As I said, the yellow things are all state law, and so I think probably your next step would be you don't want to eliminate any of the yellow, but you may want to look at the green things and decide whether or not they are things that Sherborn wants to have in. As far as new things in the definitions, we've got oral nicotine pouches. They look like a little miniature tea bag if you've never seen them, and they're filled with nicotine salts. Young people are able to use them more discreetly in school and around parents. People don't know that they have them in their mouth and that they're sucking on them. It delivers a higher dose of nicotine, and unfortunately, the ability to be sucking on multiple pouches at the same time. So they've become very concerning to us. So we've added the definition in here because we've also added, and it's a local policy that you can decide on, the ability to restrict those sales to any adult only retail tobacco stores. I should back up. Correct me if I'm wrong. There are no tobacco stores or no tobacco vendors in Sherborn, correct? Or there are?
No, there are.
There are. Wonder how they're escaping FDA by FDA compliance checks and things. How many are there in town?
1 to 2, depending on what's going on.
All right. Jessica, it would be helpful to me if you could send me the names and addresses of those at your convenience.
Absolutely. And it's 2 of them.
2 of them? Okay, great. Well, they have no history with the Food and Drug Administration, so
what kind of history would that be? They do get inspected by us for compliance with the
right, but they're not getting
inspected
by the federal government, and so I want to make sure some things like that they have state licenses, and then I would let the FDA know that they're there. I don't know why they don't know that they're there, but normally they would be checked by the FDA once every year and a half. And I went back the last 4 years, and names don't show up at all. So we'll look into that.
Is that anything related to size? I mean, does the FDA have the bandwidth to? Okay, no.
Yeah,
okay.
they check everybody. Yep.
Okay.
So then we get into things like rolling papers and some other products that you may want to restrict where they're being sold. So their definitions are in there. On page 7, section D, you'll see no tobacco sales to persons born on or after January 1st, 2024. And the born on or after is in green. Up until probably a year ago, it would just be no sales to persons under the age of 21, and that's what it would basically say. The town of Brookline, probably about 3 or 4 years ago, passed a local bylaw that then had to go to the Attorney General's office, then was sued on, then won in court, then was reviewed by the Supreme Judicial Court, where they also approved the Board of Health's ability to pass this bylaw. And basically, it says that, and it backs up 4 years because they did it 4 years ago, but it basically says in Brookline, anyone born after January 1st, 2020 would not be sold tobacco products ever. So it cuts a little slice of the population every year, very small slice, and ensures that years from now, as those people age and age and age, that no one will be sold tobacco products in the town of Brookline. So it jumped through a lot of hurdles over the last 3 or 4 years, and is now the law of the land in Brookline. It's been looked at by other municipalities, particularly in the Melrose Wakefield area. There are, I think, 7 municipalities that have recently passed it there. And because of the time difference, they've gone with the date of January 1st, 2004, when the person had to be born on or after. And a number of municipalities are looking at this, and there's a lot of political interest in it. There are some state legislators who are very interested in it, but like everything else, in order for it to become a state law, it needs to be passed locally with critical mass. So working in that direction. So if that's something that you folks are interested in, that's an available local policy. Again, it's not part of the state law, and it's, you know, nothing that you have to have, but it's there for the board to think over and see if it's something that you'd like to have in Sherborn. So you'll see it referred to in a few places throughout the regulations. Then we get into green, like indoor, wanting to make sure that there isn't a flea market outside that's selling tobacco products that you know, might be moving from town to town or whatever, and outside more difficult to you know, to maintain whether or not purchasers are of legal age, things like that. Tobacco, some of these things, as I said, you do have already, but we come to number 8, the tobacco sales permit and the number of permits. If you want to cap it at 2 that you have now, you can do that, or you can allow for a little growth and cap it at 3 or 4. I don't think that you want to leave no cap, because you know, I have to admit, I've only been to Sherborn once, but you know, potentially maybe other retailers from other communities might decide to open up a store in Sherborn if there's empty storefronts or things like that. And you certainly don't want to be a small town with an overabundance of tobacco retailers. So again, local policy, something that you can think about. So there's language in there for that. Sale of a business. We've had a lot of businesses being sold lately. We look at that pretty carefully. If retailers have a long suspension, they're facing a suspension, or they're facing a fine, they'll frequently try and sell their business. So all fines and suspensions of previous owner must be satisfied prior to sale. So just some safeguards in there. Retail density is something that we've been looking at more and more, particularly in the urban areas. No permits within 500 feet of a private or public elementary or secondary school. No permits within 2,000 feet of an existing permit. It wouldn't affect the two permits that you have right now if they're in a closer proximity to each other. It would just be any new permits that would potentially come in. Prohibition of smoking bars. I think whether you've already done that or not. Not seeing it real quickly. Yes, you already have, so that's great. And I would recommend that you leave anything in there that you have already done. Then we come to G, the oral nicotine pouches. And again, it's up to the board's discretion. Oral nicotine pouches can only be sold in adult-only retail tobacco stores. So an adult-only retail tobacco store is a tobacconist, a vape shop, things like that, where that's pretty much all they sell is tobacco and vape products. Young people are not allowed to enter the store. There needs to be some mechanism at the door, whether it's a buzzer and the door is locked, or whether there's a person sitting there and asking for identification, but there needs to be some mechanism to ensure that young people can't just come in when they want to.
Can I ask a question about that so I
Yes.
don't forget? Are there any municipalities that don't allow adult-only tobacco stores?
There are a handful that have prohibited adult-only tobacco stores. The nice way to do it is if we backed up to the maximum number of tobacco product sales permits, number 8. You could say at any given time, there shall be no more than, and whatever your number, if you're happy with 2, no more than 2 tobacco product sales permits issued in Sherborn, of which 0 will be adult only. So it basically bans adult only tobacco stores.
Okay, it's a nice way to
Right.
put it.
But there are a couple different ways to get about it language wise, and there are a handful of small municipalities that have banned them, small to medium, so that's definitely out there. You know, a lot of difference in feeling. You know, some people would say that they want to move everything to the adult only stores so young people aren't being exposed to it. And some people, you know, want to kind of move totally out of tobacco and hope that by banning the adult only stores, maybe also now looking at what we call the nicotine free generation, where you have to you have to be 21 at least right now to ever be able to purchase those things. Just start removing tobacco from the community altogether. Smoking bars, nicotine pouches. You've already got your cigar sales regulated as far as price. The price has gone up a little bit due to inflation, so that's been adjusted a little bit in your draft. Sale of flavored tobacco products has been prohibited by the state. You folks, I believe, did it before the state did, but we've added a little bit of green in there. It may be common sense to you and me that if a retailer possesses, holds, or keeps flavored products, that we could assume that they're selling them. But we've had to put that language in because some retailers have said, oh, no, those aren't for sale. I just keep them on my shelf. So this way it takes care of that and makes that a non-issue. So you'll see possess, hold, keep a few times in there, and I recommend that be in your regulations. It's a nice way to just kind of clarify things.
Hey, Sarah,
Yes.
so flavored includes menthol, correct?
Flavored includes menthol in Massachusetts. Flavored also includes what's being marketed as non-menthol. There are 5 brands that are being marketed as non-menthol, the most predominant being Newport non-menthol. The pack looks just like the old menthol Newport pack. We've had We've had menthol smokers test them, and they say that it's not quite the same, but that they are getting a menthol sensation from a chemical called WS3. Same thing that's in menthol shave cream, things like that, that gives you the sensation of kind of a freezing, cooling menthol. So recently, on just in June, right? The Department of Public Health, after we've waited for a long time for them to come out on this with an advisory, came out with an advisory that these 5 particular brands of non-menthol, and they're the only ones that are marketed in Massachusetts at this point, are considered flavored products.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, these non-menthols are only being sold in Massachusetts and California because we're the only 2 states that have the include menthol in the flavor prohibition. So that takes care of those. The retailers were given ample amount of time. I think that they've got now until September 6th to get them out of the stores, whether whether they continue selling them or they contact their wholesaler to come and pick them up. Wholesalers have agreed to refund the retailer the price for them and things like that. So they are on their way out. You've covered already self-service displays, vending machines, non-residential, roll your own. Healthcare institutions is a state law, but you folks have covered that already. Same with educational institutions, that's a local policy, and you folks currently have that in your local regulations. Now, when we get down to the violations section, this is where you have, again, some area of discretion. When the 2019 law took effect, it basically says that if you sell tobacco products to somebody under 21 and it's your first violation of the law, you get $1,000 fine and you're subject to a 1 to 30 day permit suspension. If it's your second violation, you get a $2,000 fine and a possible suspension, depending on what the existing regulations with that Board of Health say. If it's your third violation, and this is all within 36 months, I think, the fine goes up to $5,000. And assuming the Board of Health would give a longer permit suspension. So sales to somebody underage are not the only violations that are covered in this. It's anything that's covered under the state law. So if you sell flavored products, the fine is $1,000, $2,000, $5,000. If you trying to think, it's an extensive list, and of course now they're not jumping out at me. You have to, there are certain levels of nicotine that non-age restricted convenience stores can sell, and adult only can sell a higher level. If a convenience store is selling an electronic nicotine device product that has over 35 milligrams per milliliter of nicotine strength, that's a violation of state law. So again, it fits under the 1,000, 2,000, 5,000. So there are probably about 18, 20 different things that fit under that. So you have a choice of either having 2 fining structures, the ones that the state law covers, and then the ones your local regulations cover, like you've banned smoking bars, you've increased the price of cigars to make them not as attractive to young people. I believe you banned blunt wraps, things like that. So those are all local policy decisions. You can have 2 different fining structures, or you can decide that you want to have 1 fining structure, and that would have to be the 1,000, 2,000, 5,000. So that's a local decision up to you folks. And then even within that, you would need to look at your current regulations at your suspensions and decide ahead of time how much time is going to be made, be handed out as far as suspensions for anything. Right now, you've currently got, on the first violation, the board may suspend up to 7 days. On the second violation, says may suspend up to 14 days. On the third violation, may suspend up to 60 days. The problem with the word may is if you give me a 14-day suspension on my second violation, but you give Jessica a 3-day suspension on her second violation, I'm going to come back at you and potentially not only appeal my suspension, but also maybe get a little bit more progressive and take the town to court. You're much better off not opening up Pandora's box and using the word shall. It really limits, it limits what the board can do. It shows that there's absolutely no favoritism being given to the retailers. You've got such a small amount of retailers that you might as well just do it anyway and change your existing regulations to use the word shall. And then again, you can look at the number of days for the suspension. If you're happy with 7, 14, and 60, you can leave them at that. And then on a fourth violation, may revoke. And again, it leaves you open for issues later on if a retailer feels like it hasn't been handed out evenly to them. So my recommendation is always using the word shall. And that may be all of it in a nutshell. So a lot of green for the board to look at and decide what they want to do. That would be my recommendation, is that would be your next step. And then if Jessica wants to communicate back to me what the board would like to do, or if you have other questions, I can certainly meet with you folks again and answer any questions that you have beyond any that you might have tonight. And then we come up with a draft that the board is happy with, and then go to a public hearing. It's not required. Only Title V public hearings are required, but we recommend such, unless you were changing a few words here and there, or adding a definition, that's fine in a regular Board of Health meeting, but something with so much of an impact as these changes, we recommend that you have a public hearing. So I can work with Jessica on legal notices, things like that, to get you to that public hearing phase. Any questions?
Yes, we do prefer to have public hearings on regulatory changes, just as a part of precedent and maintaining that and that process.
Great.
So for everything, all our regs.
Sarah, any prohibition
Yes.
against growing your own? And are any regulations about that included in this?
We are funded for tobacco and tobacco only. So when you're getting into marijuana and things like that, that's
No,
not.
no, I'm talking about growing your own tobacco.
Oh, growing your own tobacco. Well, isn't that unique? Nobody's ever asked me that one before. I always get the grow your own marijuana.
No, I know that
Okay.
seeds are available for
Yeah.
growing your own tobacco, but I know someone who's actually done that.
There are no regulations about that at all. I'm sure that there probably at some point, if you've kind of tilled the field and you've got 20 acres of tobacco, I'm sure that there are Department of Agriculture regulations and things that come into play. But, if somebody's just kind of home growing, there's no regulations on that.
Thanks.
So we do have a number of things, since we were the first in the state to ban the flavored small enough town that we flew under the radar for any of the
Right.
tobacco companies. So it got harder the second time when we wanted to add menthol and a few other things. So there are some things in our regs, like we have restricting the sale and use of, I think it says something more like tobacco and nicotine delivery products, because we didn't want there to be any confusion. I don't know if that's not necessary now, because we felt that there might be some loophole by only specifying tobacco.
Sure, I mean,
I
you
don't
can
know
leave
if
the
that's the case
language
or
like
not.
that, but no, it's really not the case anymore. Even within the state definition of tobacco product, it covers all electronic devices. It covers other types of nicotine devices, things like that. So again, and these oral nicotine pouches are a perfect example. They're, there's no there's no tobacco in them at all, but technically they're considered a tobacco product. Anything that has tobacco and or nicotine in it is considered a tobacco product unless it's been approved by the FDA as a cessation resource.
Okay. So it sounds like that could be simplified by having a definition that says tobacco covers.
Right, and that's
YZ.
in this draft regulation. If you go back into the definitions, tobacco product is defined, and the definition is the same as what the state has.
Okay.
Any questions about the nicotine-free generation? That's such a new one. I'm not sure most people have even heard of it, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, I heard about it through the MAHB conference, but
right.
I was surprised when I heard it.
Yeah,
that has gained traction.
It has. It definitely has. And once the Supreme Judicial Court said that was well within the Board of Health's purview to do that, we're not seeing any indications that there'll be a lawsuit beyond the lawsuit that was filed unsuccessfully in Brookline. So we think that, we definitely believe that it's safe for municipalities to go forward and pass that provision if they want to.
And Sarah, you said that Brookline used the date of 2020?
They did, because it was probably about 3 or 4 years ago that they passed it originally. And it took, because all of their health regulations end up to be bylaws instead of regulations. Bylaws then have to be approved by the Attorney General. That takes a while. Then there was the lawsuit. That takes a while. And there was the appeal of the lawsuit. And we thought things were all set then. And then all of a sudden the Supreme Judicial Court kind of got wind of it and said, hey, we want to take a look at this and see what this is all about. And they did, and they also have approved it. So Brookline's been enforcing for a while on it now. And the enforcement is going well. They did a lot of education with their retailers first, so that the retailers understood that anybody born after the date of January 1st, 2020 would never be allowed to buy tobacco in Brookline. And that's regardless of where they live. If they come in to Brookline with a driver's license from Canton, they still, if they're under the age cutoff there, they're not allowed to be sold tobacco products to.
Thank you.
And I think maybe my other question, maybe we have to think about, is how much do we switch over to something like this and then weave in some of our specialty Sherborn things that we've worked on, and depending on how we feel about those as a board now, versus take these things and insert them into the regulations that we have. I don't know if you've done enough of these that you have any recommendation or guiding principles for that.
I've included everything in there that you have in your existing, with the exception of, I think it's 6.2 maybe, you have training for violators. And I don't know what you're thinking of in terms of training. If somebody had sold during a compliance check, what would you have them do? I wouldn't suggest that you have anything in your regulations that you're not prepared to enforce. There are some trainings out there online at MHOA's website. There's probably about a half an hour online training, but it's anonymous. It's in English and Spanish, and goes over the new state law and all of the aspects of that and everything. If you had a larger group of retailers, or are you part of a shared service arrangement?
Yes, we are. Charles River Health
About to
District,
be, yeah.
Medfield,
Okay.
Needham, and Dover.
So I have I also do retail training for merchants, and I prefer not to do it for clerks, but I will. They generally tend to fall asleep and ignore it, and they're just there, and that's it, you know. But I do retail training for the store level. I do it virtually, and I probably need about 4 or 5 people to attend. So that's why if you had a group within your shared services of retailers in the different communities, that might be great, you know, and they don't even need to have made a sale. They might just want to, you know, attend the training to hear what is the state up to, and you know, what happens through enforcement and things like that.
Okay.
But that's the only thing that I
Right.
found.
Something new for us to consider. I'm going to guess and say that the training was probably because our inspectors, various types, end up doing a lot of training because we
Sure.
have such a small population of any kind of entity here in town, other than properties with septic systems.
Sure, and if you want
Overabundance of that.
Yeah, if you want to leave it in there with the realization that that's what your inspectors are going to do, then that's fine. That's great.
Mhm.
And I'd be happy to work with the inspectors on giving them some merchant education material that we have, things like that.
Sarah,
Okay,
would it be
Mark?
possible? Sorry.
Okay, go ahead, Jessica, and then Mark.
Sarah, would it be possible for you to provide me with the links for the updated signage for our establishments?
They're on the clearinghouse, MA clearinghouse.
Yep.
And they're all listed there, and that's where you buy them from. But I have a handy dandy 1-page flyer that I'm going to send you that shows all of the different required signs that they have to have.
Great, thank you so much. I remember you had sent that in Westwood, so I just wanted to circle back about that.
Sure, I'll send that to you tonight.
Thanks.
Mark, did you still have a
Yes,
comment? Or
thank you,
question?
Darren. I'm having a little trouble with my reception. I don't know if I'm breaking up or not, but I just had a question on section 5.3 of the regulations. And Sarah, and Jessica, this deals with determining age of people, and that ID shall be checked for anyone 27 or younger. That gets to be kind of a judgment call, and I know in previous work that I've done that we hear all the excuses from the reasons why they sold to the person, why they didn't check for IDs no matter what their age. I just wanted to know if is that type of regulation being more or less eliminated from various cities and towns, this 27-year-old general age to check
It-
for?
It was eliminated, Mark. You won't see it in the new template. It was eliminated as part of the 2019 law because, as you said, how do you tell if somebody's 27?
Exactly.
And so now what the new law says is that every tobacco purchaser has to be asked for identification every time they purchase a tobacco product, and that includes vape products. So it's like at Fenway and the Garden and Foxborough. You want to buy a beer, you have to show your ID. You go back again for another one, you have to show your ID again. But that's going to take a while to ingrain that into the minds of retailers.
That's fine. So that state law will supersede the 5.3 in our regulation and our.
Yes, yeah,
regulation. That's good to
yeah.
know.
As you know, your regulations have to be stricter than the state law
Okay, thank you.
or equal to. So right now, you know, a retailer couldn't rightfully say, well, they appeared to be over the age of 27. That's not the rule anymore.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you.
Could we
Deb.
keep our regulations shorter and just have the things that are more strict and then assume that the state picks up for everything else? Or
I've never heard of anybody doing that, but I think I think it puts the retailers at a disadvantage because having the regulations inclusive of everything, I think can help them if they ever bother to go to your website to read it, or if you know if your health agent is out doing inspections and they say, you know, don't forget the new regulations are on the town of Sherborn's website, and here's the link to it or whatever. And so I think it's helpful to have everything in there. Something is telling me in the back of my mind that Cheryl Sabara in the last year or two came up against some attorney that said, well, it's not in the regulations, but it is in the state law. And this might be something that she's working on with the town of Braintree. I'm not sure, but something's telling me that we've determined that's not a good idea.
yeah, I'm just worried about us getting out of sync with the state regulations as things change.
The town of West Springfield took the draft that's, you know, identical pretty much to what you're looking at and put it in their format. So I don't know if that's what you're trying to get at, but they did that. And so it basically has everything in it that the draft has, but it's in the accepted town format. You know, one advantage to the regulations being this way is that a number of retailers in the state have more than one retail establishment. So if they see, you know, familiar regulations, it's easier for them to digest it. But you've only got two retailers. So I don't know. I'm lazy. I wouldn't go to a lot of work for two retailers. But you know, that's up to you folks. If you want to do that, you can. What I've also seen and done a couple times is the first 3 pages you've got on our new draft, you've got all whereas statements, and that can be shortened significantly to, I believe it's like one short little paragraph. So if you're not into listing each one of them and having the citations and everything, we have language that shortens it to very brief to one paragraph.
Okay. Jessica?
Sarah, just a quick question for you. So there was a question about, so obviously we have to be either in sync, we have to be stricter or equal to the state law with these regulations, and there's no room for wiggle room. How frequently would you say that this type of policy is updated with new state updates per se? Because
State
don't we
updates.
have to keep adding those in, right, as we go along?
State updates, not very often. We can't go back to the legislature every year and get them to pass new laws. 2019 was huge. They did things that we didn't even ask them to do. So I'm not sure how soon we can go back to them. I know that you know, there was some movement this year about excise tax on electronic cigarettes because they kind of fit into a tax loophole. But as far as new laws, we can't go back, I would say, for another at least year or 2 years. But the local regulations, the technical assistance providers, there are 4 of us. We meet pretty frequently. And so over the course of a year, we may revise those local regulations a few times, but most of the time it's just a little tweak as far as language or something, and you don't need to take the revision. It's just anybody who's doing the whole revision going forward, we would recommend it. But yeah, so
Perfect.
hopefully I answered your question.
You did, because I wanted to just know, and as it goes for all of our other regulations, like Title V and et cetera, that the frequency, right, in which we're updating our regulations was in question, like a concern.
Right, right. Yeah, and I mean, you haven't updated your regulations in a while.
Right.
The state law's been in effect since 2020, but you've been responsible for enforcing it since then, even though it's not in your regulations.
Correct. Thank you so much for that clarification.
Okay. I'm sure we will think of more questions in the future, but I can find I'm starting to fade here, and we still have quite a number of big topics to cover this
And
evening.
Rob Truax,
So, but I really appreciate you spending as much time as you did, including listening to scintillating septic issues.
It was. I get scintillating septic a lot though. And and I keep saying, I'm not buying a house with septic, but every time we move, we buy a house with septic. So I was very thrilled to hear we're in the process of selling right now. And I was very thrilled when my Title V certificate came. So it's a day to celebrate in Massachusetts. I'm happy to come back whenever you want. Jessica knows where to find me, and the process moves as quickly or as slowly, as thoughtfully as you folks would like it to.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All righty. Have a good night, everybody.
Great night. Thank you.
Good night.
So Daryl, if I may, Rob Truax, I believe, if you're still, I see you're still here,
Oh,
Rob.
no, absolutely. I do want to get back to
He's
wrap
waiting
that
on
up. He's now.
193 Forest Street, Daryl, just so you know.
That's right.
Oh, and actually, we haven't
All right.
finished 60 Brush Hill. That's right. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So Rob,
Where did we get to on
there he
Brush
is.
Hill? I'm
Hey, Rob.
trying to recall.
We were down to the last variance that you could consider tonight. And so if you want to draw 60 Brush Hill up, and the waivers are on the sheet too, we can look at those. And I think we were discussing, and I did take a look at the real estate, I forget the name of it, Zillow. And indeed, it looks like there's been some changes on the property. I know a board member did have a question too on the property. It seems like, Rob, maybe you might need to just take a look at the property and label the buildings so we know, because, you know, when you look on Zillow, you see that garage has a porch off it now. And I know the building commissioner, back when we were dealing with the previous owner, was very concerned about what was in those other buildings. And that's Chris Canny. He's still our building commissioner. And he was hoping when we ever got to this point that they would be described, because the previous owner, not the present owner, would not let him into those buildings. So just a little history. Thank you.
Yeah, and maybe there are floor plans that are available that we haven't seen, but that already exist. That would be helpful too. Okay. So we're up to the,
Up to 3, I think. We were looking at, did we ever decide on the single pump, or was that something the board wants to review a little more? I don't know if we ever
I
got,
don't
ever got to a
think
vote.
we finalized that.
Yeah.
So does anyone have any outstanding issues they want to talk to about the single pump? I could see where possibly a double, I mean, I do agree that 2 pumps are better than 1 in most cases, but the compensating factor here for me, although I could be sticking with 2 pumps maybe, but the excess capacity of the tank is very large and therefore allows, as Rob pointed out, for, you still have an alarm. Someone gets notified that the pump isn't functioning and there's time to get it repaired because the tanks are just so much more capacity than a daily flow. Maybe a way to address this, if, say, that cottage is being let out as an accessory unit or something else, that I don't know if there's a way to have a requirement that the alarm on the pump feeds up to the owner's residence, or if that's too complicated to enforce.
It may be, but I'll let Rob talk on that. They may have to wire it up to the house unless they have remote alarm.
Right, or get, yeah, and that, again, is very hard to monitor, but it would certainly be in their interest if they have people staying there who aren't telling them that there's something beeping and they disabled it, or, I don't know. Or maybe it is just too hard to deal with that.
Yeah, the alarm's pretty loud. I mean, it's gonna be annoying for someone to just ignore it if they're in there. What you could do is, from the commercial applications, we put the alarm on the outside of the building.
Oh.
It's very loud. I have one on my building that I own in Holliston across the street from our office. And it's gone off a couple times, and I'm sitting in my office and I can hear it across the street. So
Well, that might be a way, because then at least there'd be
yeah,
complaints.
you could condition it that we mount the alarm on the outside exterior of the building, so they'll hear it. They're pretty loud. Because usually they're in the basement on a residential application, but on commercial they're on the outside, or on the exterior.
Guess it depends on how often it fails and whether it becomes a nuisance.
I was having
Therefore,
problems with mine. It wasn't the pumps failing, it was just the alarm was failing. It was a nuisance.
We've had the issue with, until we got the floats redesigned and reconfigured, the floats would fail.
That happens too,
Yeah, and then that would trigger the pump.
yeah.
failure.
Sometimes the alarms are going off and it's not the pump.
Okay, so anyway, all right, Rebecca, and then if anyone else has a comment, or we could sit on this and continue this one issue since we're having another variance hearing, right, for the on-site well.
Yeah, you wanna hold this one over until the next meeting, that's fine.
Yeah, maybe just to see if there are any simple options, but okay, Rebecca, you have your hand up?
Yeah, so I appreciate the fact that sounds like in your judgment, from a perspective of public health, it may not be a risk, but I still feel that we as a board should be conservative because we're setting a precedent. And unless there's some unless we want to change our regulations and say something like a 2-pump system is required, unless there's X capacity that can compensate for public health risks, I think it becomes, just like every other precedent, it just becomes really complicated for the board going forward. And we really don't know what the future use of this property might be. And so, I don't know, my instinct, as I said before, I'm sorry to be redundant, is to just follow the regs unless we change the regs to make it less, avoid a slippery slope kind of situation that precedences tend to set. Thank you.
What do other people think? Do you want to vote tonight or mull it over and take it on?
Rebecca, I mean,
Stephen?
Daryl, I have a quick question. Does the pump have a battery backup or no?
No.
Are you thinking about that in terms of the alarm ability to function?
Yeah, I mean, if the pump goes down, you get the alarm, is there a battery backup that would also keep the pump running for some time? That's what I'm asking. I think I have my answer.
So
No, there's
I
no
know
there's no
for-
battery backups on these. If the power goes out, the alarm's not working, the pump's not working.
Okay. Yes.
And the well's not working.
If I can help too, so if the pump shuts down, the power is still on, there are float alarms in the tank, and the float alarm will actually lift up like this, and that sets the alarm off.
Right.
So it's based on that liquid pushing that. It's like a bubble almost that gets lifted up from the water. Sorry about my hand gestures, but that's when the alarm would go off. But it's up to the board. The board will have to come back to address the distance to the on-site well as a second variance hearing.
Yep.
This could be added to it. And just, Madam Chair, and so you all know, there's one other one. It's up to the board if you want to look at that one tonight. That's the DEP where it says local upgrade approval. That really, the plan has been changed to say DEP Title V waiver variance, and it's the same request that's shown below at number one. It's the same. It's referencing Title V, not a local upgrade approval. So that language is correct. It's up to the board if you want to get to that one after the one that's being discussed.
Okay, so I'm thinking that, I don't know, I'm finding this one hard to really choose. Again, because it's already an over design of sorts. But yes, I could see for consistency, it might be easier to just leave it at 2 pumps, and that's the way it is. And I think power-wise, power goes out for a 2-pump system or a 1-pump system, you're in the same situation right. Unless you have something to run your well, you're not going to have fluid to even send out into the tanks. So there are all sorts of permutations on this. So is that okay with everybody? General feel? Hold it off till next time and see if we can collect any additional information or.
Yep, I'm good
Okay.
with that.
All right.
It may give Rob
so
a chance to talk to his client. Maybe his client will decide to just go with the 2 pumps, but they'll give Rob some time too to talk with his client.
Right, and that may be the easier path than mounting it on the outside and they're away and somebody's using it and the alarm is going off and driving all the neighbors crazy. I don't know. They're just hard to know.
Does the board want to get to the next waiver? Okay.
Yeah, I think so, because the next meeting is already busy too. So, all right. So this is now a
DEP Title V.
Title V waiver.
You waiver a variance. It can be worded.
Okay, or variance for 310 CMR 15.2032. And that is for this special 1-bedroom design flow, which has, Mark has worked closely with DEP Nero office on this, and so it is allowed.
Correct.
Therefore, would anyone like to make a motion to grant a variance to 310 CMR 15.2032?
So
So
moved.
moved. Yep.
Seconded.
Seconded then.
Either.
All right, any other discussion? Hearing none?
Pete Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye. This is,
And Daryl Beardsley, aye. And then,
Now, if I may, on those deed restrictions, the new plan shows a third deed restriction, and it's related to the waiver that was just granted. And that is that a deed recording will also have to reflect this has been allowed for a one-bedroom septic system.
so I want to hold the deed restrictions for kind of everything once we get through it, because I'd like to do as a group, the approval and then the associated deed restrictions, because maybe something else as a result of where we go with the pump and the well. Does that make sense? And so what we voted on so far does not mean that there will not be deed restrictions. There may be some associated with these particular waivers, but we will do that at the next meeting. And speaking of which, so I think we're ready to close the hearing for this variance hearing. But we're going to continue. Oh, how do we do that?
What the board did on 226 Western Ave is you just held a second variance hearing.
I know, but we only had the one that was outstanding. Now we're carrying one over.
Oh, I see. Oh,
I
boy.
think you have to continue it.
Yeah, so we'll continue this hearing until the next, and then we'll open up another hearing for the other waiver. All right, so we need a date and time certain, and I think we already have 3 variance hearings for the
August 17th.
1st of August.
Well, August 17th, I believe.
17th. Is it
Yes.
17th? Okay.
I believe. Let me check.
Yeah, I don't know why I keep thinking the 21st, but that's been in my head.
You might be right, Daryl. I'm gonna check. It's the 21st. I apologize.
Oh,
The
is it?
21st.
Okay.
It's stand corrected.
All right. So if we have 3, we start at 7:20 to 7:40 to 8. That would be 8:20. Do I have that right? 20.
Is Jessica here? She might have that in front of her.
40 to 8 o'clock to 8:20. I think it would be 8:20.
It would be 8:20, Daryl.
Okay, great. So, all right, so we'll continue this hearing to August 21st, 2024 at 8:20 p.m. So thank you very much, Rob,
Thank you.
for all your help working through this.
And Rob, don't leave because you might.
No, I'll stick around.
193
Yeah, so
floors.
193. So let me pull up the plans. Rob, what's the size of the system that you're currently designing for Forest Street?
8 bedrooms.
8 bedrooms. Okay. I'm a little on the fence when I count. I come to 9, so that's why I was curious. We have to figure that out.
Just so the board knows, there are 3 acres for this property, so they will meet the nitrogen loading requirements.
Right.
Oh, good. Good. All right. Is everyone seeing a basement plan? It's funny, it's not showing up on my screen. It's showing to you.
Yes, Daryl,
You are seeing it?
that is correct. Yes.
Okay, good. All right. All right, so this is the basement in the existing house. There's, it's called a hall, but looks like a room to me. There's a full bathroom, a hall, closet, stairway coming down from one part of the upstairs, another stairway coming from another part of the upstairs, finished storage, but no windows. and then this play area.
My
So to me-
understanding is the storage in the mechanical room, I was told, were unfinished.
Okay,
That's what he told me on the phone the other day.
okay.
They're just, yeah, that's just an unfinished basement area.
Okay, so I have to say, this is, even if it is finished, there is a possibility for the board to consider that for rooms that may be finished but have no egress to the outside and have no windows, we have allowed deed restrictions on them because they really shouldn't be used as a bedroom or another inhabitable room, so for safety reasons. So that's a possibility, but what to me becomes an issue is that given that this area here can be isolated from the upstairs, giving it privacy, and there's a door here, so it's isolated from this area, which also has another way out and doesn't have to pass through this space to get upstairs, that this could be considered a bedroom suite, or, you know, a bedroom with its own bathroom, and it's a full bath. So, and it is a self-contained space. So normally we consider a room with its own full bath qualify as a bedroom. So this might be where the extra bedroom is coming from, possibly, in my count. Does anyone else have any comments or questions here, or we could take a look at the rest of the house too?
Well, let's look at the rest of the house.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of house.
Yes. And more to come.
Oh, yeah.
With the new building. So this is the first floor of the existing house. So this, to me, these look like outer walls, and this does not. So do you know, is this heated at all here, or is this just a...
It's a 3-season. It's not heated. It's a porch.
Okay. All right, good. So we have one room here, family room. This looks like an island, and so usually it can depend on the house individually and how the spaces are, but since it has an island, that could be for prep, and then it has an eating area. I'm tending to look at this as just the kitchen altogether, one room. Then there's playroom, a living room, and a dining room. I'm seeing 5 rooms here. And any other comments, questions on this, or we go on to the second floor? And there's the third floor, and a barn and a cabana, so we have a ways to go.
There is.
All right. Come back to any of these. Okay, so second floor of the main house. Even though there's kind of this little series of rooms here, all, you know, access through bedroom 2. So here it's a suite of rooms for 1 bedroom, 2, 3, 4, and 5 bedrooms there. And then there's a third floor, attic, so stairs coming up. I don't know if that's a wall or railing. And then there's space, and there are windows, 3 windows in the space, and then storage space that has no windows. Kind of depends. I mean, it's a room.
Yeah, we called it a room in our count.
Yep, and we usually have any room above the second floor is a room, so that could be a 6th bedroom.
This is finished space. This isn't just.
No, I think it's finished. My understanding is that's finished, that room she's pointing at. It's sheetrock.
Okay.
Is there heating?
I'm gonna assume there is, if it's finished. I don't 100%. But I was told by the builder that that's finished, that's a finished space. So we counted that as a room in our count.
Okay.
Darrell, were you
All right.
considering the basement room, a bedroom, one of those rooms with the full bathroom?
Yes,
Basement. So that would bring us up to 7 bedrooms for the house.
right.
5 on the second, 1 in the attic, and 1 in the basement. So it becomes 7 bedrooms.
Mhm. And I think the better layout is
Let's
here.
see.
Sorry, this will just take a moment to come into focus, I think. I hope.
Oh,
I don't know why it's taking so long, but there we go.
there it goes.
Okay. All right. So there are 3 levels in the barn. So this is the main level. So there's a large space here, but then also a kitchen. So 2 rooms. In the basement, there's a large room, and right off of that large room, out, and it has egress to the outside, is a full bath. So could qualify as a bedroom, as we've treated other spaces like this.
That's the base.
And then there is a loft. That's right above the first floor. So that's another room. So that's 3 and potentially 1 as a qualifying as a bedroom under the definitions of room privacy with a full bath connected to it. So that's
4 rooms, we're
8
calling that.
bedroom. I think so. 1, 2, 3, and then the loft 4. Yep. And then, last but not, well, maybe least, maybe it is least, but still nice, is Cabana, which is a room with a full bath. And since there's really nothing else going on there, this would be more like a suite than other places where we have a bath off of a hall, but there are lots of other activities and rooms nearby that are sharing that. So it's another room and another bedroom. So does anyone view any of these buildings differently than I've chosen to evaluate them?
That would bring you up to Darrell from the counts I've been keeping is 19 rooms and 9 bedrooms.
Mm-hmm.
If the board sees it that way.
Where'd you get the
Same count
19,
I
Mark? I had
came up with.
18. Mark, how did you get the 19 rooms? What are you counting? Can you just go through the floors real quick, what your numbers you had?
Did you count 3 in the
Mark, you're
basement of the
muted.
main house?
Talking to myself here, I apologize. So anyways, the barn, I believe we said 4 rooms.
4 rooms.
The cabana is 1 room, even though it counts as a bedroom.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then the house was 14 rooms.
Okay, I had 13 on the house when she went through it.
Okay, so I was counting the attic, the 5 on the first floor, the 5 on the second floor. Let me make sure, and the 3 in the basement. But
I only had 2 in
Right.
the basement.
yeah, so that exactly, Rob, because we talked, I had 3 in the basement. It might come down to 2 if that room isn't finished. So that's correct. So it's anywhere from the,
18 rooms.
yeah, 18 to 19 rooms, yeah.
So that would make it half would be 9 bedrooms.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
And with a 9-bedroom system, you could have either 18 or 19 rooms.
That is
That's
Way,
correct,
you
yeah.
know, it'd be fine. So,
Yep.
so the question is there any of these potential bedrooms that are not officially intended to be bedrooms?
Well, we
that
counted
they're,
five for sure bedrooms on the second floor.
yes.
And I would have to agree with you on that basement room that I would not feel comfortable not counting that as a bedroom. That's pretty well laid out to be a bedroom when you look at it. Like you said, the bathroom's right outside the door. And there's
Yeah,
closets
and
in the room.
it's isolatable, so
Right. The
you know, in
attic,
terms
maybe.
of function, yeah, maybe the attic.
I would say the attic is not used as a bedroom. I don't think they use it as that. That would be the only
And
one.
that, yeah, I have to say there have been some other, let me get back to that one. There have been some other issues where the stairwell is open enough that coming into this is more like a landing. So we have had other instances. It starts to get tricky when it's this big, but if it was really open and not giving a sense of privacy.
Where does that stairwell go down to? Can you go back to the second
Yeah.
floor?
Yep.
Let's see where it comes from.
It is this.
Is it that one?
Yeah. Yeah. It is this
Yeah,
way
it is
because,
that one.
right, it's long this way and then
That's right, yeah.
is over here.
Yeah, it kind of does look open like a handrail, didn't it? It doesn't look like there's any
Right.
doors on that stairwell. So if that were the case and they were willing to put a deed restriction, would this be something that they could live with? I mean, the barn looked like barn had a lot of rooms in it for a barn.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think
And
I knew it had that basement area, to be honest.
yeah, none of them I don't think qualified as the basement, right, is the one. But I
Right.
believe they want the shower there because they're planning a gym. Are they willing to give that up, or would they be willing to give up the bathroom in the basement as an option? We've never deed recorded a room, except very, very early on. I'll have to say there was, I don't know, at least one where an upstairs room was deed recorded when it was viewed as a 3-season porch, but who knows? So a little bit of tricky stuff in the early days of using deed recordings, but since then it's been basement rooms that don't have the characteristics that you would even want for a bedroom, safety reasons, meaning the egress and windows and kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't
Finished
think.
space. So the third floor would either have to view it, I think, as a loft without any privacy, and it'd have to have that feel. I don't think we would be inclined to deed restrict it.
Is this something, Mark, we should maybe do a walkthrough and look at that?
We normally don't, I mean, we require that you do that and.
Oh, I could do that then. I was thinking you want. I mean, I'm thinking that third floor is not something they would use as a bedroom. There's no closets. It doesn't look like it has a door on it.
It's always a possibility. I think pictures help too, Rob.
I could do that. Let me talk to them about the
Want to take
attic a little bit.
photos?
Yeah.
Maybe we could. I don't know. It's a little tough to start conditioning little things like do not put a door on it. Don't.
No, I mean, they've been in the house for some time. I think if they were going to do something with it, these people would have already done it. I don't know how many people live in the house. I believe that there was a divorce and the ex-wife is there with the kids. And this is her house and.
Yeah. Well, and it's about what people might do in the future, but.
True.
We'll have to catch that at some point. Or whether we talk about. All right. See what you think they might be interested in. You can explain what we talked about and how we're viewing
Absolutely.
the rooms, and then they might be able to make a choice of either the basement or
Maybe they do
keeping
something
that
with the
loft
barn.
open and, yeah.
Maybe they get rid of the
in the
loft in
barn.
the barn.
Oh, another question could be, is the cabana a 3-season cabana? Is there heat?
Geez, I don't know. We'll ask them that.
That would be another issue. If they only plan to use it seasonally, then that might take care of it too. Although it does have a fireplace in there.
But can you go back to the cabana? I thought,
Yes.
is it? I don't see the front of it. I wonder if it was open.
I think it had like a little porch.
Oh, it has that thing in the front. But I'm looking at the.
Yeah.
Is it?
It does have an outdoor shower. So the other thing is if they took out the shower inside, but that's what made me wonder if it was a 3-season or 4-season.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll find out because I mean they have plumbing in there, so if they're not heating it, then they've got to winterize it.
Oh, right.
You know, so my guess is they're probably heating that thing because they're not going to want to winterize all that
Yeah.
plumbing. That's a lot. That's probably more work than it's worth.
Okay, Rebecca, you have a question, comment?
I just had a question. This is the house on Forest Street, right?
Yes.
Because one of the pool cabana drawings says Dover.
Does it? I can't
At
see
the
it.
top of the drawing, it says Miller Hill Road, Dover, or something like that. One of them, right there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Is that
Okay.
this house, or is this a different house?
No, this is his house.
And I believe
Okay.
they may have lived, no, that's 2023. When they were building it, I know they were living somewhere else, but no, they might have taken their ideas from 43 Hill.
Probably, yeah, someone probably already built this somewhere else.
Hmm.
I mean, it's quite the barn.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Like you can't see from the road that is all there.
It's not there.
No,
Oh,
this is yet
this is
to
what
be
they're
built.
The barn and the cabana aren't built yet.
Okay. Okay.
That's in the
That
pool.
makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, so the whole thing that triggered this was the proposal for the barn, the cabana, and the swimming pool.
Mm-hmm.
That's what pushed us to the septic upgrade.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Got it.
Increasing the
Sorry. I'm
septic.
sorry. That's really. I was like, well,
Yeah, no, that's not there.
so
It's
this is
there.
the proposed construction, not something else. Okay.
Yeah, so the pool cabana, all that out, the swimming pool, the cabana, the barn are all proposed structures. The house is there and the rooms in the house are all finished, like we said, but this isn't built yet. That's why I'm
Okay.
saying maybe they can modify their barn a little bit, and I don't know what that loft is all about. I don't even know if that's necessary. They could eliminate something to get rid of a room.
Yeah. So there are a bunch of options of what they
Right.
might be able to do. The other question would be, do they have the soils and the space to add even a little bit more to their existing septic system and just go to, if they don't want to give anything up or are having trouble, is
Right,
that
just add
even
2 trenches.
technically feasible to make it 9 instead of 8?
They have plenty
But-
of room there.
Okay.
Yeah, they have the
Alright.
space. They could do it.
Okay.
Okay, I'll speak with them and go over it, and we'll have to. Well, obviously, we're not going to approve this tonight. I'll
Yeah.
talk back. I'll reach out to Mark and let him know what my findings are.
Yeah.
That'd be good,
And
Robin. Pictures are helpful.
yeah, and I'm sure,
Yeah.
depending on feedback or if they want to talk with you and Mark together, then, reach out to Mark and
That would be fine.
Yep.
go over this mix of choices.
I have been dealing with their contractor. I think it's Sweeney,
Correct.
contracting. So they're welcome to reach out to me as well, and Rob and I will work together on it as well.
Yeah, we'll see if we can come to a conclusion. One way or another, we will.
Okay. Good.
I mean,
Well,
I don't
thank
have
you.
a problem adding another trench. I mean, it doesn't seem like money's an issue. The septic's going to be the smallest part of the project.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Well, see what happens and let us know, and
Okay,
we'll talk about it again.
all right, sounds good.
Thank you,
All right.
Rob, for waiting
All right.
too, but.
Thank-
Yep, no problem. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Okay, you too.
You too.
All right. See. Ah. All right, I'm gonna save harder one. Let's see. We have something to talk about mining. Oops, wrong document. All right. Our shared services agreement with Needham, Dover, and Medfield is this intermunicipal agreement. Looks like it's ready. It's been reviewed by town councils of all the towns involved and has been tweaked. I haven't gone through it for the things that it'll also be reviewed by select board, so there may be some parts that are of concern to them. I went through the parts that are of concern to the Board of Health, and things appear to be in order. We need to sign this soon because that's how the monies come from the state to support the shared services arrangement. We're one of the last towns in the state, or last groups in the state, to complete this. Not the very last, I don't think yet, but that means we benefited from all the groups that went before us and had worked out a lot of the kinks of an intermunicipal agreement. And it can always be changed again, but it's a starting point. And I'll just highlight a couple of things that are important for the Board of Health being involved in this. All right. So I've been going to these meetings, and Jessica's been to the last number of meetings. Jeremy had gone to some early on. And there's a voting body, and it's representatives from the boards of health of each of the towns. So this beginning part, Board of Health, will appoint one member and one alternate. And each town has equal vote, and we're requiring unanimous votes for anything to pass. Because it's worked well for other groups that are similar, who are close together, share some common interests, and just in the general spirit of, if you have a split vote or 3-1, do you really want to exclude the one? Or do you want to work out and find out like what's prohibiting them from wanting to vote for something and try to come to an agreement for something that works for everyone? So again, I think it's Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard are in a shared services arrangement, and they even have more towns, and they've been doing it for years, and it's been working fine. And if it isn't working fine, it can change. So in any case, those are the voting people. I've been going, but they want another person to be identified as an alternate. However, I think that can change pretty quickly over time. So if we have one alternate for some period of time, or on call if I can't go, or we want to just swap in general, it shouldn't be a big deal to change, because Medfield has already done that on a number of occasions. So is anyone interested in the near term to be the alternate? To possibly go to meetings. And I'll say that they've been once a month, but they're only required to be quarterly. But for now, in the startup phase, we've been trying to do once a month. It doesn't always happen. 5 weeks or weeks between.
Daryl, these are in person or virtual?
And they're half virtual and half in person. It's the goal. Or hybrid. Actually, even when they're in person, they're a hybrid. So you can always do it remotely. And Rebecca? question?
Oh, I was just gonna say I might be interested in being an alternate.
Okay, I will, I should mention that they take place during the working day.
Do they
Usually
happen
a morning.
at a time that is predetermined, or is it different every time?
It's been, well, there's one tomorrow, and it's 9 to 11. And tomorrow's a remote one, but it's been Thursdays, kind of around later in the month. But again, we don't have a huge history of of meetings, and they have moved around because of holidays and all sorts of reasons. But because the shared services folks are staff in Needham, housed in Needham, for them really during the day is the way they operate. And it has been issues for various people to be able to attend. And in any case, what we've done too, when there wasn't a quorum, still held the meetings, just don't vote on anything. And we really haven't had anything that's been so urgent. This is probably the most urgent item only because we really are kind of at the tail end of the period allotted to us to come up with an IMA. But aside from that, and this is something we're voting on. Anyway, you could mull it over. I'm planning to attend tomorrow. So if anyone's intrigued by it, do let me know. And then we'll also figure out kind of how to have some continuity of awareness of what's being discussed at the time. And again, a lot of the things we talk about haven't been critical to make a decision at that moment yet. All right, so that's one important piece, that whole one person voting, the quorum, making decisions. And anyway, you could read through. If you had more questions, let me know. But the question would be is, do we have a motion to authorize me to, and I'll show you where, me. Okay. At the end there, contacts, and then to complete this, every town's representative of the select board and of the Board of Health has to sign it. So it will have that review, I believe, tomorrow night at the select board meeting. But anyway, would anyone like to make the motion to authorize me to sign the agreement on behalf of the Board of Health of Sherborn to enter into this shared services IMA?
Okay. So moved.
Seconded.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none.
Pete Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Darrell Beardsley, aye. Okay.
So I think that assuming that they're going to give the dates in advance and I would have time to change my schedule, I'm still interested in being the alternate. If you're, I don't know when the deadline for the decision is, but I'll review the
there's
material.
not really, there's not a hard and fast deadline. But that's pretty appealing. Maybe I could take a break. So I'll let you know when there's a schedule for the next one. All right. Codification project. Anyone get to look at that? Complicated, I have to say. And the one thing I haven't done, I did a little spot checking, but not a lot, is I know when Ellen, here's what happened. The town wanted to change the organization because everyone was doing kind of different numbering systems and naming, and they're putting it into one. So the Board of Health regulations have kind of 305 as its major section, and I don't know what the other departments are. 220 for planning board, I'm guessing. But, so every group that had regulations separate, now there's a way to refer to them in a more organized fashion. This started last summer or fall, I think. And they did run the Board of Health regulations through it at that time. Ellen reviewed it and kept finding that when they were converting to the new numbering system, that some of our regulations that would, one section would say, and see also, or 18.2 somewhere else. And somehow those conversions weren't working out. The references were wrong. She made corrections. I haven't had the time to check with that kind of precision, so I can't speak to that, but it seems like a reasonable effort. I presume we could, if we come across something that's wrong, get that corrected, hopefully without too much trouble. But Jessica has her hand up, so I hope she has the perfect answer to get us through, like to a fast vote to approve this and move it on.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Daryl, for taking charge of my section. I appreciate that.
Work your magic, Jessica.
Oh gosh, no, thank you so much. So Jackie Morris and I have taken a look at the numbering that Ellen started, and we were actually able to compile a document with the changes that the board had implemented. I believe, was it 2020, Daryl, that we implemented those changes?
Well, we've done several changes.
Our section, so
2020, no, we've done a bunch of sections, and we also did 23, but it wasn't October. I did want to mention that was one thing that wasn't correct. We voted on them October 4th, 2023, but they, especially for the septic, I don't know if there's a different rule for wells, but it's when you publish it in a newspaper announcing the changes. So that was November 9th, 2023.
Perfect.
So that would be the one change I could see needing to be applied.
So with that being done, I created a merged document with our regulation changes reflected in that document, and I provided it to Jackie, who was then able to provide it to the consultant she's been working with to do the codification, which is using the general code software. So she was able to get that numbering all implemented. So if the rest of the board had the opportunity to take a look at it, at least, or we could bookmark this topic until our next meeting. There was also a section of just general housekeeping changes in language that I provided in the agenda docs. Very, very straightforward. So if the board would be able to, I don't know if they would feel, again, comfortable at voting and to approve those changes this evening, or if you would also like to bookmark to the next meeting.
So when I saw those changes, to me they look like a basic find and replace, because it was changes at the state level nomenclature of things. So that seems more uniform. The other problems that Ellen was finding were not in what she had prepared or related to changes. It was just for some reason when it ran through their software to add the 305 and renumber things, it would just get some of the references embedded in different sections, not in the section you were in. So their references to elsewhere just was never quite hitting the mark. That was, and I haven't looked for that yet.
So now that we're the last department to get our changes in, I wanted to make sure that Jackie had finalized other departments' regulations first, so that we could avoid that format issue with ours.
Oh, okay, because, so they saw it elsewhere and then they got it fixed, sounds like.
Because I think everybody's was off kilter from that.
Okay, because Ellen was frustrated at making the same changes multiple times and they just never stuck. All right, so that's good news. I'm looking for going to bring up that other document about the changes because I think, unless everybody read it, are people comfortable with voting on the? I think I found it.
I want to say thank you because that sounds like a huge amount of work and it's more busy work than anything else. So that's actually going to be smart to have it consistent with the other boards, which I think is great. I personally just came back from being away for a couple of weeks on a rafting trip where my phone was fried. So I personally haven't had a chance to review them, but I don't think I need to keep the board delay the rest of the board if everyone else has reviewed it.
So here are the things that I think would be easier, but others certainly say how you feel about doing this, accepting just the renumbering of the regulations, which is adding the 305 and for the most part following the organization of our regulations, but again, changing the numbering a bit. Second one is that, let's see. And then the keeping the dates from before as a reference is more of a format change than a content change. It's supposed to be only format, not content.
Yeah, I don't personally have any objections at all because it sounds like it's just a formatting change.
And then here are some of the other Jessica was just referring to. Soil Conservation Service to Natural Resources Conservation Service, etc. Publication name changes, that sort of thing. So I think I'm comfortable with all of these.
I've looked through them too. Most of these are just housekeeping, grammatical.
Yeah.
These are
Pretty straightforward. I looked at this document also.
I would be comfortable voting on this.
Me too.
So can we vote this concept as a block, Jessica? Would that satisfy the needs for your communications with Jackie?
Absolutely. I'm overjoyed.
Okay. All right. And we could even accept it all saying that, I guess I'd want to know, let's say when we go to read our regulations in detail for something and we happen to note that, oops, it's something in well regs is accidentally referencing the body art section that really might not have anything to do with wells, that can they just change that, or will that take a public hearing to change, or will it be recognized as a typo?
It would not take a public hearing to change. It would be recognized as a typo.
Okay. All right. Great. So with that, does anyone think we should be so bold as just having a motion to accept the new codification of the Board of Health regulations?
I do. I think we should.
Okay.
Yes.
Nothing like doing it at 10:25 at night. So, all right. So are you making that motion then?
Yes, I'm making that motion. Do you need me
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Thank you all
right.
so much. I appreciate that. And I'm sure they're going to be happy to move it along.
Thank you for all your work on that, Jessica. Rebecca, that is a lot of very tedious work. You did a great job.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Mark, under agents business, do you want to walk through a couple and actually, it's not
Well,
on
we
here.
did everything up to the ZBA petitions.
And then we have, I guess,
disposal works construction permit for James Schmidt. I don't know if the board wants to look at the information that was submitted by ZBA, but I would say on 26 Bullard Street, we're familiar with that property. That property, we've dealt with before. We know the arrangements down there, and this is a 3-year renewal. And on 102 Washington Street, that's new, so that would I'm gonna have to look at the septic system capacity and make sure it complements the proposal. So I would ask that for 26, I don't see an issue with that. We've done that before. But for 102 Washington Street, they're both accessory units. For the accessory unit at 102 Washington, I will need to review the septic system capacity, look through the Board of Health files as well as the building files, and get back to the board with an answer. Or I can get back to the chair and just let her know if it complies with our previous septic plans.
Yep. Okay. That sounds reasonable to me because, as you said, Bullard is a continuation, essentially, as long as nothing else has changed. And then Washington Street does have to be reviewed. And would you be reaching out to them or wait for them to contact?
Well, this is interesting because this hearing happened prior to this meeting, but we would still have to reach out to them when they go to, I presume they're going for a building permit. This is new, so, but I can start the review at this point prior to the building application.
Yeah, I can't remember if 102 was actually building something new or just converting an existing space.
It could be converting a building, if I remember right.
Yeah, it's converted. I
Okay,
watched
thank
the
you.
period. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So, and maybe we just need to keep an eye out for it, because if it doesn't show up, we probably should reach out, given that ZBA provided us the thing that said they told them they need to contact the Board of Health.
Yep, exactly. At least the ZBA.
About their plan. So.
Yeah, they have that condition in all their approvals that they are in compliance with the Board of Health. So that's a good situation with the ZBA. When they take their votes, they always include that.
Okay. All right. So those two, and then J.G. Schmidt.
Yeah, I would recommend approval. I've worked with James Schmidt before, and I've had no issues with him. He has his references checked. He worked in Ashland quite a bit when I was over there, and I'd recommend approval, but conditional to him conducting pre-construction to any installations.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the disposal works permit for J.G. Schmidt, conditional to pre-construction conferences?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other discussion? Hearing none?
Steve Constantine, aye, with conditions.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Darrell Beardsley, aye. And then I think the last item is regarding an upcoming agenda item for the, what was that Pleasant Street number? 0?
Trying to think which one I know we're going to have 42 Whitney Street someday.
Oh, 42 Whitney. I've got it all wrong. Sorry.
It's okay, 42 Whitney. It's let's say it's in process right now and not ready for the board.
I don't think that's on our agenda tonight.
No, it's not. That would be a future agenda item.
Yeah. So, but who is which? It is 1 Pleasant Street. Okay. So.
Oh, 1 Pleasant, yeah, that's a future agenda item too, based on a plan we just received this week that went through conservation this week. So that would be a future agenda item as well. I'm sorry, across 1 Pleasant.
We had a request from the person they really wanted to be on the meeting tonight, but it's a project that requires variances, which means a butter notification. And we just got the plans on Monday. And therefore, because they went through conservation last week, we received the plans on Monday. Would have been hard to even do a thorough review by tonight. And in no way could the abutters have been notified as required by Mass DEP, where they know 10 days in advance of the variance hearing. So there are two possibilities for them if they want to move it along. There might be some financing issue at stake, but again, that notification of abutters about variances is taken very seriously by Mass DEP, and they don't want us to be varying that, or anyone to be varying that. So I see options as one thing that we have done for folks in the past who are squeezed on time but are trying to provide information to whoever they're either. Sometimes it's been a buyer, sometimes it's been a bank, financing institution, or something else, is we can describe where they are in the process, which also basically sends the message that they've entered into the process and they're making headway on that. So, and write something up that doesn't promise anything, but just describes what's happening, what's going on, what's needed. The other option would be to try in the summer, the difficult summer time period, for something. I don't think timing-wise we could do anything before August 7th, but the question is, do we want to try to even find a date? And during this complex period where none of us has planned for this, we've had a long-established schedule. Sometimes people also don't want the meetings so much in the summer because people are traveling. So abutters may want to attend, and this would be an unanticipated meeting. I don't know how people feel about that. Or we add it to the 21st, and Jessica and I and Mark could work on preparing a letter for them to use for anyone who wants to know what's going on with their project.
I think that's the reasonable, I mean, that has been the process, is we don't just schedule special meetings for any variance hearing. I mean, I think they should be on the schedule for the 21st, and if they require a letter about where they are in the process, then that can be provided, and I think that's a reasonable resolution.
Yes, I have to say, for special meetings, one, again, because we've had trouble trying to schedule things that were emergencies recently, timing-wise. So I can't imagine this next month is going to be any easier.
If we were up against the 45 days and it was on our end that we were coming short on time, then that is absolutely reasonable for us to do that. But that is not what's happening in this situation.
Yes, and we've done it for when people's wells have gone dry or something. So we have, certainly during COVID, we were doing it with much greater frequency, but we don't want to compare everything to a pandemic either. But
worked out, even wells, we worked out a process where I can approve an emergency well repair, and then it gets confirmed by the board at their future meetings. So we do have mechanisms in place for the once a month meetings in the summer, and it has worked out. It's worked out.
And
I'd be
no,
glad
and
to run.
for different kinds of things, but I don't know that this is that same kind of thing where we would authorize you, because again, it would be violating the abutters' right.
Correct.
To hear about the variances and we have had, I do remember one meeting when sort of one's usual set of variances, but an abutter came and was able to say that where the well on their property was identified was not at all where their well was. And that was really important because that forced a change in the design because of just how close the well was. So there is value to having these hearings where abutters are notified and can come and weigh in. Okay, so then we'll instruct them Oh, so now we'll have 5 variance hearings on August 21st, because this will be after the one we just assigned for Rob Truax.
Yes, yes.
So that was what, 8:20, so it'll be 8:40 for then the next one.
Yep.
I guess, Mark, it may be too early for you to tell. Is there any chance any of them would be quicker, because maybe we run the risk of tightening? Oh, but
I think you will find that they will all be quick. They're not new engineers to the town. Now, will you have some questions from abutters? I think you may, but I don't think you'll be that many questioning it. But again, it's hard to say, especially in the summer. I don't know how many abutters are available to show, but as we saw tonight, we didn't see any abutters tonight. In fact, I thought Sarah, who I know, McClogan, after I realized it was from tobacco, I thought she was an abutter. That's why I kept asking, are there any abutters?
Oh.
And I realized, wait a minute, that's Sarah from the tobacco program. So
No, you were very diligent. That was
I
good.
know, because
That was the best.
I kept seeing her showing up, and I said, Sarah, I swear I know her. She must be a resident. Then it all came back to me. I was having a moment, I guess, but I
That was
realized
the best ever.
she's
Well,
nice.
actually, I realized we can't really change any of the times for the, I was going to say shorten everything to assume 15 minutes per, so we're not sitting with dead time. But
We can
we
fill
can't
in
do that
time.
because we've already announced, the continuation. I think we should, for Rob sending out the announcement, he could probably post both of his variance hearings for that same property as the same time. So let's not spread that out.
Yeah.
Make sure he knows to do the
Yeah,
new
that will be a long one.
also at 8:20.
Yep.
And then a question is, just in case we're finished early and have filled in every gap for the others, maybe we make the Pleasant Street at 8:25, and it'll just start late, just in case. But actually, we can't take anything early, so we'd have to.
And we always fill in that
Yeah,
extra.
maybe there is no way to do this.
Well, in that extra time, Darrell, we always fill in our other business between hearings. So
Yeah,
it's quick.
yeah,
It's nice to fill in other business in between.
yeah. All right, I think
You're over
right,
up to
because
the-
there's nowhere to put it close where it's going to really make any difference.
True.
I'm sure we'll have plenty to fill in, Daryl. Don't worry. If we have dead time,
Oh,
it will
yeah.
be the first in over a year. So
Yep.
don't worry.
That's the spirit. Okay. All right. Does anyone think I've missed anything, like your favorite topic? I think we don't have too much to add to the agenda for next time. We already have a lot more will come in, I'm sure. Anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Darrell Beardsley, aye.
Have a good night, everybody.
Have a
Night,
great
everybody.
night.
Thank you,
Thank you
everyone.
so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.